There we go. We are officially recording for our official director's commentaries. So, hello. Hi. Welcome. Welcome to the Haunting of Joni Evers's first director commentary session over here in the Worlds Across the Causeway Discord. My name is Amanda Farough. I'm a recent addition to the Causeway team. I am the director of production, and, I do some narrative stuff here and there. But I want to introduce us to the actual people who will be doing the talking when I am asking the questions. So, hello, rest of the team that will be speaking today.
Hello
Introduce
there.
yourselves.
Hello.
Who the heck are you?
I'll go first. My
Do
name's
it.
Kjartan Kennedy. I am the studio director of Causeway Studios, and I also handle most of the technical aspects, so a lot of the programming and optimizing and making sure that the game makes it onto Steam and all of that kind of stuff.
And my name is Greg Rogers. I'm the creative director. I head up a lot of the narrative and design stuff. I was the creative director and game director on The Haunting of Joni Evers. Yeah, that's what I do.
That's what you do. Well, I mean, you're not
That's
off.
what I do.
Yeah, but you're not off the hook yet, because the first question I actually have for the two of you is, how did you get your start in game development? Let's go all the way back. I want to hear some origin stories, because that, at least for me, that's the juicy stuff. That's the stuff I live for. So, Kjartan, since you introduced yourself first, why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into game development?
What got me into game development? Okay, so if I go all the way back
Go all the way
to
back.
all the way back to high school.
Ooh.
I mean, I got into games in general when I was young, because who didn't? But I guess I had a slightly delayed start because I didn't get to play many games before I moved to the US. Kept it fairly simple with basically Pokemon games and SimCity, and then moved to the US and got into consoles and things like that. But there was a period in high school where I just sort of randomly decided that I really wanted to get into game art, which, as you can tell, is not what I do now. And as Brianna can attest from the sketches that I hand her every now and then, it's good that I don't do that. But yeah, there was a period where I was like, I'm gonna go to Full Sail and I'm gonna do a game art degree for environment art, and it's gonna be really cool. And then I kind of randomly decided not to do that, and I ended up starting school for music. So as a music education major.
Oh my goodness.
At the
What a
start.
roundabout journey we're going on here. I love this.
It gets even weirder, because then after a little bit, basically sort of I actually went and did drum and bugle corps for a summer and stuff like that, and then I decided, no, music education's not what I want. So then I switched majors into computer science after about a year and a half, and that's kind of where I stuck it out. But after about a year of that is when actually a good friend of mine, Haley Ray at the time, now Haley Rogers, Greg's wife, took a game design class at the university, taught by a certain professor that is near and dear to all of us at this point. And she was like, "You would really enjoy this." I was like, "Okay." And I was studying abroad, studying at home in Norway at the time. And so basically, I came back from my studies there. Next semester, I took that game design class. Really enjoyed it. Really got into Unity development and all that kind of stuff. And then that professor had been running some virtual Pompeii work, sort of doing a visualization of Pompeii that I know Greg can talk a lot more about, and was sort of moving into getting this educational game studio at the university started up. And so I joined that, did that while I was finishing up school, became really, really good friends with Greg over that period, started to become friends with Brianna, but we didn't have too much overlap. Greg and I eventually lived together, and then I left and I moved to Seattle to work for a while. Ended up working at Unity for a bit, and throughout that whole period, well, now we're getting into the Causeway story, so we'll hold off on that bit.
Oh, that question is next.
Yes,
it or
so I
not,
will. I'll
people
hold
do,
off on
in
that
fact,
bit.
still
But
read
basically, it just
magazines.
kind of became this slow
They
roll
do, right?
journey thanks to what I had available to
Who's
me
got
at the
time for
university.
trips?
But it kind of felt,
Maybe one
it
day.
kind of feels like that was inevitable, considering that was the
Leave
dream
Valerie.
in high, even way back in high school. Even though
Getting
it's not
tired
even
of whooping
remotely
the
what I
computer's
do
ass.
now in terms of
I
what
miss
game
playing
development
with
I do, what
Sarah.
aspect of it I work on.
Antoinette Dubois was a
That's what I
trailblazing
wanted
character
to
for women in
do. That
horror.
was the
The
thing.
sequel movie is
So
underrated to
kind of
this
just
day.
feels like things went as they were supposed to, even though there was a
Exactly.
roundabout journey for it.
Look, I am the queen of
Sarah and I
roundabout
loved
journeys,
going to
as
these
folks will get
cons.
to know once you get to know
The
me.
decades
So,
in
but this
LA
is
are
not my
multiple levels up
story.
from
This is, in
Hades.
fact, your guys' story. So, Greg, what about you? I mean, now I got a little bit of your origin story, but tell me more. What got you to game development?
Well, as we all, I think,
That's
do, it's
better.
like we're all interested in games growing up. We're all drawn to them in certain ways, different ways. Um, but for me,
Shit, I
it
completely
was, I
forgot.
think, a slow
What a
realization
mess.
of what
Well,
narrative in
it's not gonna
particular
clean itself.
through games could do and could feel like. Um, and that, you kind of get
You left your crock pot. I'll get it back to her
acquainted
later.
with that slowly with things.
For
like I remember
once, things have
playing, I think it
cooled
was
off.
the
Catching up with
GameCube
Reed was
remake of
great.
Metal Gear Solid,
Where did it all go
uh,
sideways?
playing some BioWare stuff,
Someone could get
Knights of the
bad
Old
tonight.
Republic, Mass Effect was pretty big.
Always good
But some of
to
those ones that
stay
were,
prepared.
pretty
This was just
mainstay
an
narrative,
accident.
games that
I
we
don't
think of
think
now,
Reed realized. I
or
can't believe
studios
she
or
brought this up.
developers.
If
Uh,
anyone needs
but
therapy,
at
it's
the
her.
time, it wasn't
Things were
like
so chill last night.
it was something where
Why'd she
games
have
were
to bring
known for
family
that,
into
or
it?
it was unsure of or unknown if they could quote unquote reach the heights of other kind of media. And so that's where the interest started. And
You
then,
said you
but I
needed
never really thought
this.
much about it. My first major when I went to the University of Arkansas was history. And I just did that because
What
I liked
a
it and I thought it was
mess.
interesting. Um,
It'd be
and
nice if every
then
mess
it
could
kind
be
of
solved with
slowly
the press of
developed
a button,
through
wouldn't it?
taking this virtual Pompeii course, which came into a game design course, which I took 4 times in a row because there was no other
Out of
course. So I
sight,
just kept
out of
taking it
mind.
to kind of stay
Better check the
exposed to it.
mail.
That's pretty
And
cool.
then it kind of built up to an internal studio called the Tesseract Center at the University of Arkansas, where we were all kind of these just self-taught people who were just trying to make stuff,
Huh.
and that snowballed
I'd love to check her
into
out.
one thing after another. There's a whole huge story behind that.
This house has stood for over a
But
century.
that's the basics that
I
kind
think
of
I can handle a few
became
cash jobs.
the start into game development.
Which kind of leads us into the start of Causeway. So let's start digging into the roots that make
Well,
up this
I'm an
studio.
Evers, but
Take us
I'm
through
still
the
family.
studio's inception.
You got your wish, Norbert.
Well, it starts I think with Kjartan going to Seattle, where we had spent some time taking the same classes, working at the beginning of Tesseract at the same time when it was still kind of
How have I never
fledgling.
seen this?
And then
Grandma
we always kind of knew we
told
wanted
us how
to
Grandpa
try something,
passed.
to do something, to try and make our own studio, to just give that a go. We didn't know what that looked like or what that was, but we wanted to try it. And we just kind of stayed in touch through playing various games online together. And then
Mom was
time went
pissed.
along. He
Grandma
moved
didn't
from
care.
Amazon to Unity,
Dad
getting some more
encouraged us.
experience working
Can't
like
bring
in
myself
the
to scrub it
industry in a
all.
different way. And then it was almost just like one day, it's like, should we do this? We've been talking about it and thinking about it
What's this?
for a little under a decade, and
First
kind of like
this,
slowly
this.
planning for it in terms of putting money away
Why
and stuff like
now?
that. And then it was just kind of like an inflection point of let's
Oh, I
get
can't
this
with
started.
all this.
It was kind
I'll
of a
deal with
point
it
of suddenly
tomorrow.
we had a name.
I need to unwind.
We kind of knew
A
what the studio stood
movie
for.
or
We
something?
knew what kind of thing we
Yeah,
wanted to
that
make.
sounds nice.
Uh,
Old
there was
Faithful
even a
should do the
point where we
job.
were most of the way towards the logo and
Oh,
everything. The logo that still stands today, and we were like,
Hello, Antoinette,
is
my
it
dear.
time? Do we
Time for a
do this
trip to
now?
oblivion.
And that happened to just basically coincide with the start of the pandemic, which is also nuts.
Of all the things
I wouldn't
to
know
have a
anything
started,
about
like,
starting
a couple
things at the
months
beginning of the
before that.
pandemic.
I'm surprised Sarah didn't want them.
So yeah,
so you guys
that's the
started
basics.
off. You guys started off beginning of the pandemic. You know, great time to start any endeavor,
VHS
as
is the
current
superior
company
format.
understands.
Seriously?
Tell me a little
Can't
bit
catch a
more
break.
about what led
Hang on,
us
Nettie.
to the
Running
beginnings
through
of the
portals in no
haunting
time.
of Joni Evers. What were the first steps that the studio took in order to move us towards what we're playing right now?
It's a long, winding journey.
This usually does the
And I
trick.
think it started more with
That's not the move.
knowing that
That's
everything we make, everything we're going to
that my
make is going to
basement?
be narratively centered.
Edith's playing some kind of
But this was
prank.
not the first game that
Not
we
in the mood,
started to
Ed.
make. There was
she
actually a
really
couple.
record over
One
Reaper's
that we have,
table?
the first one we did,
I'm
maybe we'll
done.
still get back around to it at some point.
This isn't
Actually, there is a little
okay.
Easter egg later
Cut
on in
your
the
losses,
game
Joni, and
that's a
go to
screenshot
bed.
from a vertical slice that we made from that game. So
You'll have to
I'll
point
point
that
that
out
out
for
when we
us.
get there. And so it was a really cool game where it was kind of, there was more characters. It was a larger scope. And it was
I left this with
something
another
that
side.
we're still at a time where we were also just figuring
that
out,
you're
like,
just
how
open
do we
anyway.
operate, like, as a
Don't
creative
know why it's coming
team,
back to me
as
now.
a studio, as like
I
what
remember
do we
hiding it
exactly
as a
want
kid when it
want to make? We don't want it to be narrative focused, but like
Sarah and
the idea of
Mom.
how do we even come up with ideas? What were the worlds across the causeway? What are kind of the themes and the inspirations of getting that honed in? Where I think that I'm not sure Joni would be as
No interest in this
focused
right
or
now.
polished or like on the nose as the initial Worlds Across the Causeway tale without those intervening moments of discovery and development and pitching and all those kinds of things. As far as this story goes, actually, Mike, if you'll go back to the garage really quickly, it started, so we have a website, causewaystudios.com. There's a worlds section to it. And as part of that, especially early on, what I would do often is I would be putting out vignettes, which is these little microfiction, like every week or so, maybe multiple a week. So if you'll, it's the one that's to your left, that is the Inquirer and Reflection, on the, yes, that one right there. So it started with this. This was written probably sometime in 2022. And you can pull up the tab, you can actually see the text a bit better, for folks to read it. And it was just like trying to put together ideas of stories of snippets. And I was like, well, what if I make up this interesting town that kind of fits the vibe of like this everywhere USA that's got some Night Vale vibes, it's got some Twin Peak vibes, it's Twin Peaks vibes, all that kind of elements. And it was just writing this. And when we came back around, it to making The Haunting of Joni Evers, we'll get into like the inception of that more as we go, but it came back and it was like, oh, we know we want to tell this kind of story with this kind of game. We already have this existing character with this existing scenario that we just decided to build out. And that's kind of why she mentions, like, for example, like I don't talk like this. Like, what are they smoking? Like, what's going on here? Because things change, and we want things to be connected and to not be overly tied to canon or to a specific sequence of events, but also to pay homage to that and to kind of pull back and see how interesting story you can, what kind of interesting story you can tell through that. And so it started with that. And that is, yeah, I think that's, I could go down 50 other rabbit holes, but that's where it started. And then when we came back around to actually developing Joni, we built it out from there.
So Kjartan, from your perspective, we've got the narrative foundation now. Now we need to discuss the technical foundation.
Ooh,
because
boy, yeah.
oh boy, there are some constraints. There's always constraints when it comes to game development. So
There's
what
always
Should we give you
constraints.
some health
so
insurance?
where
Then
did
we'll
we
talk.
start in building this out?
I mean, I'm gonna go back and add some extra flavor to what Greg was referring to as well,
Please do.
because So we didn't start working on Joni until September 2023. And then, and you know, if I say we started Causeway at the start of the pandemic, that's a whole 3.5 year gap right there. So what were we doing? So we started with
Storm must
that
have
other game.
knocked out the power.
And essentially, I think the way that I like to sum it up is it's basically a Life is Strange like game.
Ooh.
There's a
Mhm.
whole cast of characters,
Good.
lots of narrative
I have my
decision making,
back
dialogue, lots of backstories to explore, and all kinds of stuff. And um,
Candles?
thanks to Brianna and
I
others'
didn't
work,
like
it looks
these.
absolutely gorgeous, and we can't wait to get to actually show that off one day.
Maybe there's something
And
on the TV
we
about the
were
storm?
pitching that for funding in mid to late 2022, and that's sort of when funding in the industry started to go off a cliff. We were actually in fairly serious conversations with one publisher about it, and then they kind of randomly came back to us one day and they're like, "Hey, sorry, we stopped doing narrative games.
Check the fuse box.
We
Yeah,
were
there's like
doing
they
these
had
4
4
things."
or so
Hey,
pillars, and yeah.
sorry, we stopped doing narrative games.
Yep.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a choice. That's a
It's a
that's
choice.
Oh, flesh on
Um,
candy.
and yeah, that was sort of the first pivot we had, which was a combination of, okay, well, we need to stay alive. We also need to do something smaller because we've realized
All
this
the
thing has
fuses
grown in
blew?
scope and we can't fund it ourselves.
I've got some spares around here somewhere.
So we pivoted to a smaller project that even still ended up being a little bit too big in scope for us to handle on our own, as well as pivoting to some contract work. So we sort of hired out the studio to do a lot of development actually for universities because that's where most of our network was. So on educational games of various types. And through one of those in particular, which basically ran for the year of 2023, it ended up being an adventure game for teaching medieval French, like not modern French, medieval French, both language
Oh,
and culture. It was a really,
fascinating.
really fun project. But that's actually like that ended up being a first-person adventure game, and that's where our first-person
Better than
controller
nothing.
comes from. It's where the interaction system we
There
use in
we
Joni
go.
comes from. We
Back to
started
the TV.
to
What?
build these technical
I must be
foundations that
sleep
we
deprived.
realized these are perfect for the type of game that we
Big
want to
gun.
start with anyway.
What's big on?
And so we started building those there. And then when we kind of came to that point in September 2023, where we said, and I can talk more about this in a little bit, when you inevitably ask another question,
It's just an illusion.
where we tried to make Joni in a month
Stress.
with
Sleep
mixed
deprivation.
results.
It has to be.
We were able to pull some of those things already from that previous adventure project. We pulled those in and they kind of built our foundation there. And then now the way that we expanded on those
must be
and
on
built
the
up even
server.
more systems around them for technical foundation for Joni, we've already pulled those into our next game to speed up
Oh, yes,
development
we
in our
sure
next game.
have.
And that's what I'm going to say there and leave that nugget for the future. But for later in the conversation. But yeah, that's how we've been kind of building the foundation, is identifying these core things that make a lot of sense for our game and building them out in a way that they can be reused as well, so that as we kind of try to keep time and resources constraints on our games, we can still continue to evolve what we make because the foundation is already there. The foundation that we built in another game, we now get some of that time back on a future game and get to build more.
Exactly. Get to dig into iteration and new and interesting systems, but no more information on any of that until the future. So speaking of constraints, that's a really interesting segue to talk about narrative constraints. We've talked about the technical ones. Now, Greg, we get to talk about the narrative ones. So let's start digging into how you started to build the edges of the narrative box that you needed to basically build Joni's story in.
Yeah. Like I said, it started with that snippet. We kind of knew we wanted to do something that was a bit more scoped. And honestly, I'm really glad that this is the first one that ended up shipping.
Why is this
because
happening?
it's a very quintessential narrative experience. If you think about the walking simulator, stroll player
Where did
There it
genre,
is.
uh,
I
you know that there,
this?
especially when you're thinking of indies, there's nothing
She and
quite
Darren
as
went to
quintessential
surgery
as
before I
that
was born.
in
I
terms
thought I
of
got rid of this.
experiences that can
Bitch.
really hit hard, but are also experiences
It's
that we
getting
can
louder.
do
I can't
in
get
a
it out
very
of my
polished
head.
way. It's a way that like indie studios can pull these games off in a way that doesn't require
I remember
just the amount of
nothing.
resources, because that's something I
Pregnant with
wanted
our
coming into
first
this was
child.
I wanted us to be
She's
at a
hopeful.
certain level of fidelity,
In love.
and that's a word I like to use because
But
quality that's
resentful?
can be
She's
subjective
of
in
course.
terms of like, well,
Selfish.
just because a game
She's
is
a
photorealistic
liar.
or super
Biding her
stylized, or
time.
like that's not really
Oh, I hate her.
quality or not quality. It's more of like whatever you're choosing to do, what is the fidelity of that?
Oh,
Can you raise
what
the polish of
was
that to a
that?
level and do that, whatever you're
I
doing,
remember
at a high level of fidelity? And that was
I
something I
wasn't
really wanted
entirely
for
right.
all of
Remember?
our games, but making sure, especially for the first
Not
one,
entirely
that we were
right.
at least achieving a certain level.
This is like something
And
straight out of
so
Attack of the Reapers.
we started with Joni, and I'm
One's
like, who is
not a
one?
fan.
What we have some basics
Phone's
of
dead.
this
TV
town that
won't
she's
work.
in. We kind of know
Better
what the
step outside and
foundation
reflect the
of
weather
this.
you'll
We
hear
wanted
shit.
this skull man to be haunting her. It was also like another like short story that I wrote where her friend Edith comes from. There's actually a whole short story on our website that's kind of honestly an unintentional prequel to this, where it's Edith is the main character, and she is being haunted by the Skull Man, and she manages to kind of
What
get away from him and banish him, but not quite all the way. And the idea is
was
like,
that?
oh, he's coming back, but this time he's gonna come for Joni. Um, but then beyond that, it was like, okay, we know we want to have a
I'm in the
game
kitchen.
that is very much like Gone Home or What Remains of Edith Finch,
can't
Dear
be
Esther,
happening.
Firewatch, particularly Gone Home or Edith Finch in terms of you have these large family homes that have a lot of memory and connection to the family, to it, and kind of what is the story that's contained within that family. And so then it was, okay, how do we understand Joni as a character,
What the
but
hell
also
is
understand
going
her
on?
through her family? And so it was like,
Of course.
what is a good
Just
suite of
feels right now.
characters, and how do each of those
I know it.
characters can they represent a story of
This is
estrangement?
crazy,
And
but
so, in what ways
what would Antoinette do
is
in Attack of the
Joni
Reapers?
mad at
She would
or
press
have
forward,
beef with
figure
or
out what's
trauma
happening, and
with
break the
each
curse.
of these characters in a way that's
I hope
not
there's not a curse.
unreconcilable, because that's what
What
the
the hell am I
story is
seeing?
all about.
This can't really be
Um,
happening.
but how are they each
But it
three-dimensional
is.
characters, but then also
It is,
how are
and
they
there's
exploring
nothing
the
I can do.
themes
Play
that
along
we're getting
now.
at with Joni as a
can't
main
leave.
character? And we can go into each of those as we come across those characters throughout the playthrough. But that's the basics, I think, of how the thought process of building it out.
That's fantastic.
Random scenes.
And in terms of the ways in which we are starting to see how the world interacts back, because we got to see a little bit of the writing just a couple of minutes ago, what inspired that?
Inspired what, like the story?
No,
Of-
like the actual the usage of the technology, the way that you're expressing these conversations that are happening, but you're really
This whole
only
studio
inhabiting Joni, right?
Right.
You're not seeing anyone else, so to speak. So
Right.
what was the inspiration for that mechanism and how we deliver that story? That piece of the story.
Well, the
rather.
inspiration started with, I think, the previous question, which is the limitations, which is we knew it's hard, it's hard to tell a story with a bunch of characters when you can't have a bunch of characters, right? And so it's a
That's
way
real.
of thinking creatively about, okay, how do we do that? And then almost having the limitations give you ideas for what you're doing. It's like, okay, so we can't actually see her family members. So how do you tell a story in which we want to explore this ensemble of characters? And then it's like, oh, what if we had you're going through the home and learning about her dad, for example, like here in chapter 1. And then that kind of slowly evolved, like, okay, what if we had
Always making mysteries.
spirits? Because we don't have to represent those at high level enough of fidelity. Spirits, memories, we ended up calling them vestiges. Because they are kind of like the memories made manifest, where in one way they are the people, but they're not the people. They're the people as the house, as a kind of magical place of power, remembers them and manifests them. And so having that interplay of seeing the archaeological evidence of reminding her in her own memories and her own perspective, and then having the
Dad and I used to catch
vestiges almost be kind of like the challenge to that of,
always made sure I set
is this really what you think it is? Is this how you remember it? And also a way to just create more interesting drama and plot in the moment, rather than just walking around a house picking up stuff, because that can be interesting in its own right, but it's challenging in terms of pacing and framing and the drama of the moment, as opposed to the lore of a place that I feel like if you can't get the moment to moment right, then no one's going to be interested, because the emotional stakes aren't there for that texture of what's the past, or what is this house, or what's going on with this magic, or what's going on with these worlds. If you can't tell good self-contained stories, then there's nothing really for that stuff to glom onto.
It's a wonderful way of describing kind of the narrative scaffolding behind these technical considerations too. And while we're talking about kind of the emotional archaeology in the story and in the house itself, let's talk about the house. The house is interesting. It feels like the house goes on forever. And Kjartan, I want you to weigh in on the house.
I want to weigh on that in just a moment, but actually I want to take an opportunity here right before we run into our next vestige to add something to how the vestiges communicate, because
please do.
Once we get there, Mike, who is piloting for us, can kind of show what I'll be talking about. One of the things that we really wanted to do in this game was try to avoid taking control away from the player as much as possible. If you notice, there might be 2 moments where the player doesn't have control of Joni's movement. There might be 1 where they don't have full control of the camera. Like, we were extremely intentional about that. But one of the things we had here was all these things that couldn't be voiced. We had all this text, all this communication we wanted to do for dialogue. And we ended up coming up, we tried a bunch of different things. We tried one thing where like the messages would sort of implant themselves on the screen, or lots of different things. But what we ended up with was this system where we have a bunch of replaced spots in the world that these messages can show up. And the system just runs and tries to pick the best one it can find that's available based on where you're looking, based on what's between you and what you're looking at. If you're not looking at a message for long enough to read it, it'll try to reposition itself in order for you to see it. And so this whole
just like we're seeing with just like we're seeing with Mike driving and kind of moving the camera around, and we're still able to keep track of the conversation.
Yeah, so that was and honestly, this even took a little bit of iteration after release, because we released the game. We saw some people play the game on stream, and we saw one in particular. It was like clearly very experienced gamer. She got the messages super quickly and wanted to move on. So she's like almost FPS style gamer. Like, okay, I got it. Whip the camera around, same message comes up. Yeah, I got it. Whip the camera around, same message comes up. And so we ended up having to like kind of adjust the timing of some of these messages. Even we sort of put in a system where it would only try to reposition itself a maximum number of times, because at that point clearly the player knows what they're doing. So we definitely kind of released it in an overly careful state, and then kind of brought it back to, oh, okay, cool, we see how it's being used and that kind of thing. But I thought that was a fun detail of sort of behind the scenes of how that messaging system works, and everything we went through to try to make sure that players would see every message. and then realizing, okay, we over-indexed on that a little bit. We could bring it
A
back.
bit overzealous.
A little bit overzealous. Those vestiges, they get a little chatty.
Very
Well, you
chatty
never know,
vestiges.
because people play
Dad can't
very
help but
differently.
these kids.
Of course.
And it could be equally as frustrating. We could have been overzealous in the opposite direction of being like, people get it, but then missing something that you wanted to read that wasn't on the screen long enough because,
Dad said he always wanted to take
again,
us to Switzerland.
we're meeting you halfway
Mom's
in terms
broken
of
promises, he said.
not a thing that I would often say was like, we don't want the player to feel like they have to put themselves in the right place at the right time to get the story. We want it to be where they can simply play and it feels like it is scripted for them, but they don't need to be in the right blocking for anything. There's this game, when you play it, it feels very linear. But there are a lot of things in here
All right, Mike,
that
hold
try
here for a
to
quick sec. Continue, Greg.
accompany. There are a lot of things throughout the game that try to reward or at least acknowledge when it comes to player agency, what I like to call player expression, where it's not necessarily that you're getting something, different content per se, but it's like you are maybe getting it in a different order, or it's sometimes it is different content of like, I wonder if I prod the edges of the system, will it acknowledge that? In a lot of cases, we do, in terms of sometimes it's try to keep you from wandering too far away because there's no content or no story interesting, so we kind of hem you in, or it's like, hey, I'm going to go back and check that out. Like at the beginning of the game, for example, if you leave the garage before you do all the critical path main story stuff, you get a different dialogue line about her. Oh, I've got this mess in the kitchen, but before I do this, I need to go back and do that. And then one that I'm sure no one ever came across because I don't see them doing it, but just in case, I'll point it out. If you don't pick up the flashlight at the beginning, there's a place upstairs where if you don't have the flashlight by chapter 4, there's another place and a whole different set of dialogue that she'll say if she doesn't have the flashlight. And so just little things like that,
Okay.
where about the timing and the duration and making sure the light writing is all in the right spots, just trying to find that right balance so that it feels curated while having paths for people to, like I said, not feel like that they need to be where the game wants them,
Sure.
and instead just play the game and then enjoy the story through the interactive media. Like there's a reason we told the story as a video game, because we thought the interactive component would lend itself well to this exploration of a strange story and family and house and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So, Mike, if you can go back to our manifestation in the other room, I know I've been having you hold for a quick moment, but this is a really interesting moment, both gameplay and in terms of the story itself. So, let's talk about manifesting. Let's talk about kind of what led you all to these creative decisions about these really crucial story moments for Joni. And Mike, you can go ahead and begin the manifestation if you like.
Yeah, we kind of discovered over the course, things became sharper and sharper in terms of what is the narrative loop or pattern to it. Things that, as we move forward, I think we'll have more figured out earlier on, I think, for our future games. But for this one, it kind of emerged as
I got suspended for clocking Sarah's bully.
as we're descending into the terrible place of the horror of getting deeper and deeper into both physically and metaphorically Joni's haunting, whether that's the physical actual haunting of the skull man or the psychological haunting of what I think what the game is really about is her connection with her family. It was, how do we have objects, since objects were like the main way of conveying story in a game like this. How do we have those objects be representations
Dad paint this?
or shorthand for who
That's
each
Dad.
of these family members are
Sarah.
and how Joni relates to them? So her dad is this artist of all kinds, but he's primarily a painter. And he's a soft soul, and he's a good dad, but he's also really scatterbrained. He can't really, he just can't put all the pieces together, and it's not really his fault. But because her mom, who is the main focus of her ire for the majority of the game, left the family when she was young, she kind of had to step up and be the parent well before a kid should have to be a parent. And so,
yes, the eldest daughter.
Yes, the eldest daughter kind of thing.
Nothing but a fraud.
And
Why couldn't he just
each
out of the way?
that was the kernel, and then we kind of built out spaces that were characterizations that could hold varieties: good memories, bad memories, complex memories, memories that have different perspectives. And then the idea is you learn as you go throughout the game that this house is a little bit more special, a little bit more magical than it may seem, and that there are
I didn't mean to. Besides, this is how I'm getting out of this house.
memories that get imbued into these kind of psychically, kind of a psychic resonance to these objects that Joni is able to attune to and see. And through that, it kind of manifests these all-important relics that are kind of the manifestation of whatever we're talking about. And in some cases, like with the next one, she's like, wait a minute, but I thought Sarah took the camera. And so these are things where it's like, it may not even be the actual object per se, but it's all the things that have been left behind are contributing to this hyper-focused object that, again, she's kind of unconsciously ripping apart as she's it's her connection and her feelings towards these family members. And part of that might be her, but also part of that might be kind of this subconscious influence that we pick up on more and more as we get deeper into the house.
So we got to talk about the house now.
More candles?
We got to talk about the house now.
house.
Let's talk about the house, Kjartan.
Yeah. Okay.
Since you were technically the architect of this house, I know Bree made it gorgeous.
She did also lay it all out. Bree is the designer of this house. So
Always another
for
project.
taking an opportunity here, Brianna Jenkins is our art director. She is here on the call, but she is the one who laid out this house. That room that we were just in is the room where that spare flashlight is laying. If you haven't picked up the first one that Greg hinted at a moment ago, it's laying. It would normally be laying right where Mike is looking on that corner cabinet. But we got the flashlight in chapter 2, so we're good. Yeah, the house is sprawling. Also, if we get to Sarah's room, I'm going to take a pause because I've got a fun story about the music, and that's going to give me a good opportunity to talk about Gustavo as well.
Thank you. I was hoping we would get to that too.
Oh yeah, I've got a fun story about the chapter 4 music in particular. The house is sprawling. It stretches on so far. There's so much gorgeous art throughout it, which means that the resources to have it all loaded in memory, to render it all to the screen, are massive. So many high quality textures and everything else. And basically, we ended up having to figure out how do we. And I'll add, so earlier I mentioned we had a very intentional choice not to take control away from the player. One of the other intentional choices we made was we didn't want loading screens. We wanted you to basically go beginning to end of this game smoothly, not flawlessly, seamlessly, that's the term. And we achieved that pretty well, I think. And so
Oh, definitely.
we basically split the house into all of these separate little sections that we can stream in and out depending on where the player is, depending on how much progress the player has made throughout the game. So like right now, Colson's studio that we were just in a moment ago is gone. It's no longer present.
It doesn't
If Mike walks
exist.
back down, It doesn't exist. It has gone off into the ether. If Mike were to go back downstairs, it would come back. In fact, right now, when we're
Interesting.
on this side of the house,
That's what I
Noreen's
thought.
room and the library
The
are
room's
gone.
locked.
They are unloaded. Okay, I'm going to pause.
Sarah.
We won't
Sarah.
really hear it because we're trying to hear us over the game, but the music here, Sarah's music in Chapter 4 is my personal favorite music in the entire game. And my fun story about it, because Gustavo here is in the audience as well. Gustavo Cochino is our composer and sound designer extraordinaire, absolutely phenomenal person, phenomenal collaborator, incredible composer. Also does work on the Payday series as well as several other indie games. Um, the day that he put the music in here, I didn't know that he had put the music in here. And I was also working on Chapter 4. And so in the morning or something, whenever it was, I pulled the changes from version control. I didn't bother to check anything. And I hopped in. I was like, okay, I have this other thing that I worked on yesterday that I need to check. There's that guy.
Yes, Mike, I see your jump scare.
This isn't.
This
It's not
isn't terrifying at all.
at all.
Sarah must have
I've
been
never
looking
said
at
that in a horror
precious
game
statues
before.
from movies.
Um, and basically, I started down in Colson Studio. I came up the stairs. I grabbed the spare flashlight because I was starting in Chapter 4, so I couldn't have grabbed it in Chapter 2. And I came over here and I walked in the door to Sarah's room. And I just hear this bloop, bloop,
Sometimes people do too.
bloop, bloop of this wonderful keyboard, and
To
I
her
just stopped.
credit, Sarah always excelled.
I
in
took my hands
movies.
off the keyboard. And I just sat there for about like 2 minutes, just letting that particular piece of the soundtrack just wash over me, because it was I don't know why that one got
Sarah
me.
could never get enough of this nonsense.
It just did, and I just sat there
Considering what's
for
been happening
minutes.
I
tonight,
think it's because it
when I was
stands
supposed
out.
to.
maybe she was on this.
Yeah, it's
It's-
different.
Because Sarah stands out. And I think that was a really good job. As the team did a really good job of telling a holistic experience through the art, through the music, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, in a lot of ways, Joni is a lot like her mom Lilith. In a lot of
It
ways,
took a little
Sarah
under a
is
week of
like
working the
her
window
dad,
at Brody Burger for Sarah
Coulson,
to look
where we
once.
kind of saw his version of that downstairs. But then it's like, in what ways are you similar?
Stick to
In
her
what ways
guns.
do you kind of pick things up from your parents? But in what ways are you your own person? I think that Sarah is probably the most unique, individual, intrepid member of the family, just in terms of what her interests are and her quirk and the way that she stands out amongst a family of interesting people. So I think that the soundtrack did a really good job of, I think, consciously or subconsciously highlighting that for folks whenever you play the game.
This was what,
Yeah,
third,
yeah.
fourth time
I think
around
there's like almost an element of nostalgia to her soundtrack, and yeah, it's so that's always the moment that I choose to highlight to
Sarah loved
really
designing
give
these
Gustavo his
creatures for
flowers
her
about this whole
homemade movies.
soundtrack is that moment where I was just awestruck by it, because I didn't even see it coming. I had no idea that music was in there.
One of the
I was
few
doing my
things
own
Mom
thing,
left for
and
me
then
when I
suddenly
was a
there it
kid.
was.
I passed it on to Sarah.
It's a phenomenal soundtrack from beginning to
think she was
end.
able to
I
appreciate
wanted
it
it
more than me.
to be along the lines of something like Edith Finch, where it's like it's got this loneliness, this longing, but this kind of you can kind of sit in it in the same way.
You got
in
another
the same
jump scare,
way
did you, Mike?
that in the same way that
I don't care what you
you can
say,
sit with the
Sarah.
house,
The
because
third
that's
one
something that I
was
wanted with
not
the
bad.
house as well, was what I thought things like Gone Home or Edith Finch do so well is they create these
Sarah liked her slashers.
houses that,
She
especially
did
with Edith
Tarantino
Finch, but
around
even with
Prism.
others, like they can't really exist, but they're believable in the sense of like the experience is believable, where it's like this fantasy of this home of like, wouldn't it be cool if this were my family home? Wouldn't it be cool if I could just take a moment and explore around and have
in my room.
that kind of experience, where it's not so far beyond a suspension of disbelief that it breaks the groundedness of the story, but it
It's in the game, it's
creates
not cheating.
maybe even pockets of someone recognizes something of like, if you grew up, honestly, in a lot of places, but particularly in the South, in the 80s or 90s, you're going to notice like, oh yeah, this wood paneling wall, you know, that's going to be very familiar in terms of that kind of small house 80s 90s vibe. It's like these little things here and there that are all over the place. And I think that the soundtrack is one where it's like I was just blown away. Well, like now I can go listen to The Haunting of Joni Evers soundtrack, have this real experience of like I can have the same emotional journey of the things that inspired us, and that's just to further give Gustavo, I think, some major credit when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
Are you kidding me? We just
This is a really interesting part of the story too, right here. This is starting to get into some of my favorite moments in the game, believe it or not. These kinds of these kinds of sibling interactions feel interesting. Okay. Again, as an eldest sister myself.
I spoke to downstairs?
So these kinds of moments where, you know, it's not about the sibling drama, it's about the sibling connection. And that's really beautiful. Kind of moving us back into the more production elements while we're enjoying this lovely part of the game. Let's talk about kind of eating the elephant, so to speak, right? Because we've talked a lot about technical considerations, we've talked about art considerations, narrative, but like it all had to come together somehow.
Caught me completely off
Something
guard.
like this doesn't get made in, I don't know, a month, right?
That sounds.
I'm not even sure the intention, you know, I guess to start that off was to necessarily ship it in a month, but I think it was, let's not get too bogged down in making any one thing perfect.
Sure.
And try to see if we can kind of get it together. I don't think that we imagined it being.
Not really my thing, but she always got what she wanted.
We initially imagined it being, let's just get a short. We call this a short to start with, which it is only about like 3 to 4 hours long, but it's still, I think, a bit longer than we anticipated it being. Of it just being like a short. We're like, let's put something out. Let's make sure something gets shipped. Because we've had this experience that we mentioned earlier of these a couple other games that have been larger scope that we couldn't really get off the ground or finish. So like, let's do something that we can finish. And so one of the ways of, I guess, trying to figure that out was, let's see if we can scaffold something together that represents the game from beginning to end in some form or another in a month. So I don't know, Kjartan, if you want to build on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the audacity.
I definitely had myself
the only reason these didn't go
saying, let's make something we can ship in a month. But it really was sort of an overcorrection, an intentional overcorrection from the past couple of projects. It was, we keep letting scope explode on us. Let's overcorrect, and let's try to make something so small that we could ship it in a month. And the funny thing is, so basically, this is a terrible story of trying to eat of how to eat an elephant, because we literally did try to eat the whole elephant in a month. We tried to like just go.
Not supposed to eat elephants in a month. My goodness.
I'm not sure how we did it.
That's dangerous.
I think back to it, I'm like, we recorded lines. I think I'm like, how did we do that?
That's the thing.
It kind of dissociated a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like game development too.
It does, right? I mean, we built the whole house. We cast Kelly. We recorded. We recorded all the dialogue. The game was playable beginning to end. The skeleton of what you see here was playable beginning to end. Did it look as good? No. Did it sound as good? No. Everything
didn't have all the details and kind of as much meat in the story. No, but yeah. The flow was there.
Yeah, so it did exist, and what it did, the positive that it did have, because after we did that in a month, we then stepped away from it for about a month and a half, and we finished that medieval French game that we were working on, and that let it rest.
Gotta pay the bills.
And then we came back to it. We gotta pay the bills, and then we came back to it, and we kind of looked at it and we said, okay, what do we like about this? What do we not like about this? What are the good
Very
parts?
Quickly, hold on.
Parts?
Mike, before you go on, if you can go on, I just want to point out of like the elements of like this player expression and poking at the boundaries. you can play through and understand the game without doing this, but some people may not even realize this. All these objects that you just could pick up, that you kind of have to pick up so many objects and kind of explore as before the object manifests, or before the vestige appears. If you go back and pick those up, you begin to start getting a distressing dialogue that Joni's memories are starting
What's this?
to fade.
Oh,
And we don't know
interesting.
exactly
But I
why.
can't place it.
It's you begin
I
to
don't
kind of
remember
get
any
that
of this.
sinking feeling of
What's
that.
going on?
The more of this is, I wouldn't call this a horror game, but like the thriller horror, certainly the psychological horror component of, wait a minute,
Cute.
I've
little
manifested
beat
these
up,
things,
but
I've
cute.
smashed them, and I just know, I've just
Little
heard
monsters.
all the
Several
background,
like
all
this.
the stories, all the connection with these things, and there's something that's just like a little terrifying, a little heartbreaking
I love
about,
these movies.
Joni feels very strongly about Attack the Reapers 3. It's the worst one. The second one is the best one. And the fact that she doesn't have that
Gross.
personality, she's almost kind of being evened out as a person, and she's losing everything that makes her like an individual. Um, it's this foreboding element that, again, it will
My
add to the
bed.
the big
My old
mid-game turn.
Why'd I have to out of here again?
But it's not something that we require the player to do. It's just, if you're that exploratory spirit, there is a lot of corners to poke at in the game. That's not just a straight line shot down the critical path.
I'm going to highlight one more, which is another. Mike, head into Sarah's room for me. And go check out that jump scare that you found earlier. It's another moment of like acknowledging player expression. No? Is it later?
It's later. It's after
It's
what's
later.
coming up next. Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah,
Probably
it's after the
better.
start of chapter 5. Okay, never mind.
There we go.
I misremembered.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So we built the foundation of what was going to become
report
the full
card?
game
Hey.
in a month. We took a break, finished the
Something's not
medieval
right.
French game, came back, started to evaluate what was working
What's it
and what was not
cryptid?
working. What happened
I
then?
feel like I should know
And
this.
honestly, from that point on, it sort of became almost just a cycle of continuously addressing what we started to refer to as the dirtiest corner.
Yes.
So this is where we come
Someone
back
gone
to
to
actually all of
college.
our experiences in marching band. And so I did share
You
a
might
laugh from Mike.
hear, yeah, Mike laughing in the background, as Mike was a marching band guy, and Mike and I were
Yeah,
both marching band parents. We don't have marching band in Canada. It's too cold.
yeah, that's fair. Same in Norway. And actually, since we're about to get to another portion, I'm going to detour and I'll come back to that
No,
as
no, that's
well.
okay.
But
That's why we're having this
uh,
conversation. We're gonna meander a little bit, then we'll come back, then we'll meander a little bit, and then we'll come back, and it's okay.
yeah, so in
Is
chapter
it
at
I
the end of
will say-
chapter 2,
I'm gonna
go ahead,
spend
Greg.
a lot of time in here.
I was just
Mike,
like,
don't interact
this
with this
part,
door.
Like he's probably somewhere in a room.
this part right here. Before we do this part, I want to preface it. So you finish what you're doing, but I want to preface this section, which I think will
Okay.
lead to some interesting conversation.
We're both prefacing this section.
I
which is
love
what's
it.
funny.
Preface
Um,
away.
So so we saw it earlier in chapter 2. At the end of chapter 2, Joni gets trapped in the house. There's these two portals between the kitchen and the entryway, and you can't leave the house anymore. And basically, Greg came in fairly early on. He was like, "What if we have these portals to trap Joni in the house? Can't get out." And I was like, "Man, portals are hard, but okay, we'll try it." And we did, and we got them working. I was like, "Okay, Greg, we got it to work. They're cool. Never again."
That's
And then
fair.
Greg comes in, and he's like,
So
"We need a
naturally, we
twist."
put in a whole section that we'll use them more.
Yeah.
And actually,
course.
so like, Mike, if you'll go down to the end of the hallway to the right, you can actually get another kind of sprinkle. Because before you actually
was
came over
reading
here before we went to Sarah's
Means it was
place,
up
and you
close
went
over here.
into her room, which again, that's that player expression agency of like, oh, I've been in that room, I'm going back in there. We had to really rewrite the first
This.
first
I
two
don't remember
chapters
anything like
of it,
this.
and that had to do with
Huh.
the introduction of the portals and
Something's
pacing and stuff
missing.
like that. And we can maybe talk about that a little bit later. But with this one, it was like, okay, I feel like we're exploring these 3 core family members, and we're saving the boss character, the mom, until the end. So we had the dad, we had the sister, and then we have the grandmother. And so we got to this point, and I'm like, I feel like we just need to throw people off balance just a little bit. The game would be fine if it were just the same kind of game loop of you go and you experience the, what we have been talking about of getting to know these characters through the space and the artifacts and that kind of stuff. But then it's like, what if things are starting to get stranger and you go and you try to open this door so you can open this door now, and all of a sudden,
Oh, what the fuck?
what you're right, exactly.
Hold
Joni said it
on.
all.
Another
Where-
portal.
Yeah.
The house is.
And so this is where I really kind of wanted to hammer home the element of, well, we have these mechanics, and so
I was just
this
in
was something that was not planned for. It was just something
Taking
where
over the
I
whole
took the
house.
portals and I'm like, what if I designed this
What is it, Antoinette?
this
No way forward but
maze
through.
that is really hammering home the supernatural component of what is ultimately the house, but at this stage of the game and the story, there's a lot of mystery of you don't exactly know
So
what's
this is the
causing
closet.
what. You haven't come face to face with the Skullman yet. This statue begins to appear, so if you go peek in there, you don't want to peek in there.
Are you sure? It's okay. We're with you, Mikey. You can do it. You can do it. I believe in you. Just it's okay. Aw, he's bashful. There's something.
And that was another one.
there.
This statue, the statue was a thing that was like, that's really creepy. And it's actually I'm not sure how many people noticed that.
Is this the thing in Sarah's closet?
In we had the asset, and then Bree and I began placing it in different places. I'm like, wait a minute, I have an idea. So actually, in chapter 3, you'll notice, maybe you don't notice, it's off in the corner, very close to where the vestige first appears. And the very first hints of something strange is amiss
Nope.
is
No, thank you.
if you stare at it for long enough and you look away and you look back, it's gone. And I bet almost no one notices that. But if one person's like, hold on, wait a minute, hold on a second, and now it's in the closet, and now this is when we're being very overt with it, of just trying to put in more interesting elements to make the ride of the drama and the plot just more chilling and more thrilling.
It's definitely chilling. I definitely got jump scared by it, and Mike just got jump scared by it himself, like out loud.
I'll go back to the house really quickly, and how the house is so sprawling and everything.
Absolutely.
This is a detail that we
Joni,
use.
keep
This is a sort of technical thing that we use. I want to say 3 times throughout the game. This is actually the second instance. This is not the same upstairs laundry room.
Oh, is this
Mike keeps scaring himself.
I got it.
I can hear him in the background. He's like, I'm having none of this. I don't know what this is, but I don't want it. I will
And what's
never.
even better is now it won't be here. Now, if you go to either side,
that looks promising.
it won't be
gone.
there. And so
Fully
it's like it was following you, and now it's not there. So it's like, just how do you keep the player a little bit off kilter to again make it feel like you're rewarding or acknowledging
Mike, hold off, please.
the
Mike.
decisions.
Chill for a quick sec.
Hold off.
Hold off here.
Yep. This is where I want to add that detail. So even this right now is not technically the upstairs nook that you were in earlier. It is a duplicate of the upstairs nook because we needed to add a wall, and we have all these beautiful baked lighting that Bree did. And however, we also wanted it to feel seamless after, or as seamless as we possibly could after you pick up the key. And so these are instances where we actually have duplicates of the house offset, maybe like 20 to 30 meters in the actual engine, and we teleport the player between them as we need to. So you'll notice the smallest flicker as you put away the key after you've picked it up, but that's actually us teleporting you between two different versions of the Nook, basically from this portal maze version of the Nook back to the regular version of the Nook.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, now you can pick it up.
This key.
So we're looking at it, and right as you put it away.
This is special. Maybe.
Oh,
And we're back.
and we're back.
Things are.
So we're
So
going
if
to
you
do
were
the
to
same
go
thing up in
back to
chapter
normal?
10.
If you'll go back
That was
to
strange.
Sarah's room, this is what
Very strange.
Kjartan was mentioning earlier, just to show very, very quickly. Because you could see someone being like, okay, developers. It's just like, you play with me. Like, I'm going to go back and kind of see what's going on here. Like, this whole area was an area that was just explored, and now I just had this trippy experience. And maybe you want to just, some people may just want to plow ahead. Other people, like I said, they want to poke at the boundaries of the of what's going on here. So
Mike loves
yeah, it's down
closets.
that hallway right there. So you go back and check where it's like, oh, like I saw that statue, and that's following
It's
me.
open again. Weird.
And you go look
Hello,
for it.
Joni. I need to look through
It's not
some
there,
stuff.
right? And so it's just kind of like these little
Wasn't
bitty
there a
things
statue here before?
here and there that reward. It's a technical designy term would be negative possibility space, which is like if you create an expectation in the player, like treasure chests behind waterfalls, right? If there's a certain kind of expectation of like, that was something that I saw. I've made a connection now. I wonder if, and I think there's a delight in seeing that you can only get in video games, of seeing that curiosity at least acknowledged, if not rewarded.
The library key better be in here. I'm not sure
Do
this
love
is the
some
time
good
for a
tarot
write-in.
cards.
I have
So this
these
is Grandma
chances.
Noreen's room.
This house really is sprawling. It goes forever.
I never
Every
knew.
time that I am in these
I wish I'd gotten the
spaces,
chance.
it's like this. There's no way this house could exist. It feels like a TARDIS.
I mean, Bree did point out earlier in the chat, knowing the layout, this house can only kind of exist. We're going to see a map of it in a little bit when we get into the library. And I think there was a little bit of concern of like, will this map reveal things? I don't think anybody picked up on.
Yeah,
Like,
and I think to my point, it's just like I don't.
There's a suspension
Believe
of
it.
We
disbelief.
can all use a
Yeah,
little
to me, I'm
romance
like
in
it's
our
fine.
lives.
Yeah, it's more of the experience of it rather than the literalness of it that I think is most important. It's what are you feeling and experiencing as you're playing it, not necessarily what could this thing exist in real life, unless that level of coherency is important to the execution of said experience, right?
Sure. So
I think we've had so many comments during streams and stuff where people have said, are exploring the house, and especially getting into like, I think this bathroom and the walk-in closet in the main bedroom are the two main spots that I hear it, where people are like, man, I wish I had this closet. I wish I had this bathroom. This
Seriously.
is amazing.
that was honestly more than once. That was my reaction the first time that I played this game, where I'm like, ugh, I want this room. This whole room could be just for art and writing. What is this? I'm so jealous of this house. Architecturally, not the rest of it. Speaking of the rest of it, though, let's start talking a little bit about the Cunninghams themselves. Like, how much do we want to get into it and talk about
Grandma used to say
the
she traveled
bones
the
of the
world when she
family?
was a young woman.
I mean, the bones of the family,
She
as much as we
stopped
want to,
telling
because it's central to the story. I think there's always more that you could go into. I think any good three-dimensional character or family, but it's something you kind of realize is like it's the haunting of Joni Evers, but it's the Cunningham house and it's the Cunningham family. It's like interesting.
Exactly.
It's like, why do they have these last names? And it ultimately boils down to this rift with the mother, with Lilith Cunningham, where you have Noreen Cunningham, Lilith Cunningham. Lilith marries Coulson. They both keep separate names, but then the
Really, Grandma?
daughters
What are we
just
doing with
kind of
this?
take the name of the father just because patriarchal society norms, right? And but then that creates like an interesting begging of the question vehicle for you to say, why did you always want there to be information that is withheld and revealed
Isn't this an
at
Arkansas?
important intervals in a story? Because
Seems
once there's
mundane
nothing
compared
left to
everything else in
reveal,
here.
there's no more story left to
Wow,
tell.
Grandma.
Exactly.
But you also, I think, want to make sure that,
The house has
you actually kind of
changed
want
so
Look
an
at that
audience to
house.
be able to know where you're exactly. So that's just like, this is an example of what the house might have looked like earlier,
guess we have you to
before
blame for the
these kind of
wanderlust in the
custom, additions like over time.
Mm-hmm.
But
This Skullman
you want to
seems
also let the audience kind of guess where you're going. You want to keep them a little bit off
maybe
kilter, but
that's
you don't
why
want to keep them so much in the
I sold
dark
the land.
that they have no idea what's going on.
Very
And so I
intentional
think
breadcrumbs.
planting those things so that you're asking these questions that either you get the answer that you figured out and you feel rightfully smart about it, or it's there's a question here, but I don't know what the answer might be. And then you get, oh, interesting. Or you get an answer that you're not expecting. And so a combination of all those things that will be different from person to person because each person's experience will be different. But also in terms of this is where we get like a larger idea of like, oh, this Cunningham family, they're not just some regular family. Like this
They are
grandmother
not.
is into some stuff, right? And you kind of see more and more stretching farther and farther back
What's
into the family
causeway?
history that we've got a family that really knows.
Oh, here's the
here's
house.
Old map of the house
Yeah.
grounds.
Damn, that's a
What's
big
really interesting about
house.
this
Before I sold off sections to pay the
on,
fees.
for example, on the top
Place
left there,
forward?
so you see the
Resonance?
living room
Spirits?
and the
Maybe there
the
was always more to this place than met the eye.
parlor. This says the parlor. We kind of hinted at this with like the broken down stuff, but both of those rooms are Coulson's studio now, because the idea is to make this big studio space, he kind of knocked down the original elements. Like there are elements where it's like there's always these little breadcrumbs where you can see storytelling that is either super obvious or right in the middle, or like you really need to be paying attention. But there's little bitty things here and there across the board that aren't just there to be there. Like they speak to characterization. So like they speak to who Coulson is. This painting,
What's this?
that is from
Never seen
the vertical slice of the first game we worked on. So it's the area of we call the Grove, and there's
Oh, so
actually
that's our Easter
another.
egg.
That's our Easter egg, and you see like there's a little character with a rabbit mask in the bottom left corner.
Oh, I see
If you move the
that.
flashlight over to the left a little bit, that was one of our characters that just kind of snuck into that one. That's also a gorgeous vertical slice. But it exists in this world. We just haven't seen it in a story. And so it's like, why does Noreen have a photo of this strange place? So little things here and there that you don't always have to answer. Just kind of adds to the texture of the overall story.
Absolutely.
Us.
One of the things that we haven't talked too
Wait,
much about
what does
is,
that mean?
you know, we talked a little bit about the pitching process and how we kind of got into it a little bit, right? This game needed money. Y'all needed money in order to finish it up, or rather needed money in order to, I don't know, be able to live like human beings. So let's kind of go into some of the bits and pieces that allowed us to even, I don't know, play Joni, because Joni is shipped out to the world. How did we get here?
I mean, that that comes back to the constraints and the pivot to contracting out the studio for other folks to utilize our skills to make their games and things like that. Because money was hard to come by, it still is hard to come by in the
It's
industry.
very hard to come by, yeah.
So actually, Joni was built off of the savings that we had from those projects, from those contract projects. We didn't get any kind of outside investment for Joni. We didn't get any kind of outside project funding or anything of the sort. There was a little bit of Greg and myself continuing to inject some of our own savings. There was a little bit of those projects that we did being able to do this at sort of enough of a profit margin in order to continue paying us. And then honestly, we did the work a lot at fairly low compensation because we really wanted to get this game out there and have it be something we were proud of, because we were kind of tired of being in that situation of, well, we've worked on a couple of things that look really cool that garnered a lot of attention, but we can't ship on our own. So we kind of got to a point where we basically said,
so instead
whether or not we get to keep going, we do want to come out of this having shipped something that we're proud of. And that ended up becoming the bar of success for Joni. It didn't become some kind of sales number. It didn't become some kind of review number. The true bar of success, with a very intentional sit-down conversation about it, was whether or not we're proud to say that we shipped this game. The whole team. That is Greg, myself, Brianna, Gustavo, our other collaborator, Nicolina.
Mike, if you'll pause here.
And a couple of other folks that we brought in here and there for smaller things, like our casting director, Laura Shatkas, or Julio Nolasco, who also did some additional art right near the end. It really just came back to, is this something we're proud of? Yes, great, ship it, and be extremely proud of that fact. And I think that really resonated in a lot of the reviews that we've gotten as well. I think we've gotten a lot of reviews of people who said it really spoke to them, we have some reviews who said it helped heal some things in their own lives, which is just astounding.
Beautiful.
But yeah, it really is a labor of love and a labor of passion, like so many games are, I think.
100%. So I think we're going to let Greg take over here for a second, then we can dive back into my next question.
I was just kind of further elaborating on the question of family here. So this is one of the key relics, and you can just spin it around and go straight to the memory if you want to. However, like, there's details here, and so you could actually read this one. And so if you hit tab, you can actually see what each of these entries that Noreen has entered, and it gives you just additional context, additional stuff. And I remember it's really interesting just in terms of what people took away from it. There was, I forget what review it was. I'm not even sure it was. I think it was more like just kind of like a blog post that someone wrote about it. But it quoted something from like this book, this album, as like a key cornerstone of like how they interpreted the theme. And I love that. I love that because there are like echoes and moments of that all throughout that. But what speaks to different people, what people even, discover, because there is that element. That's what's so fun about games, is there's a lot of optional content, or you can do content in different orders, or you don't have to pay attention to necessarily every little thing. And so different pieces of the story end up becoming more important or more pronounced or more in the background, depending on your own unique experience doing this. I just wanted to call that out, because it's another neat instance of how did Noreen and her husband Albert, like, what's going on there? Like, what's the relationship between Noreen and Lilith? Like, what are all these different things? And we tell you enough if you play through the game and only hit the main stuff. There's definitely a lot more that you can dredge up through your own investigations and what conclusions you draw about what this family is and who they have been and who they will be.
I'll even add with that one, in terms of like optional content. So like we have a bunch of optional content in the game, and then for us, when we talk about that connected anthology universe that everything lives within, there's even sort of extended optional content, I'll call it, because this one mentions the Black Dog and Scrivener's Point, and the Black Dog is another short story that exists on our website, and Scrivener's Point is this sort of mountainous feature that exists in several of those vignettes that Greg referred to earlier. So there's all this still. If somebody sees this and they're like, that's capitalized like a proper noun. I wonder if there's anything more, and they could go find more about that, and that could be an entry point into the whole thing as well.
There are direct references to at least 4, if not 5, concrete game ideas that like we have for what may become this, like in this game right now. Where they're not necessarily like completely built or completely fleshed out, but like concrete locations or characters or story ideas. This house is already packed with that, and we wanted to make sure that was in there as we began talking about the worlds across the causeway, and hopefully we can get some more games out, and that can really create this nice textured just worlds that people can draw what they want from it. So,
Absolutely.
all right, let's see this vision and burn this book.
All right, Mike.
So yeah, back to you, Amanda.
Of course.
What's the next question?
My next question was actually, we need to talk about the fact that y'all had a publisher at a certain point. So there was a time when, in fact, this was published by not Causeway. So I know that, can we talk like just very high level about that?
She lets her daughter walk away. She's afraid.
Yeah, I'll take this one. I mean,
fight.
there was a point. Basically, I think a thing you'll discover is that Greg, Brianna, and myself, we're all actually fairly
sick of this.
quiet, shy
I
people.
need to get
we
out of
don't
this house.
tend to like go and bombastically put ourselves out there and things. And that's kind of a thing you have to be good at for marketing. In general, typically, you have to be able to talk about your thing. The whole myth of make something good and the people will come and find it is a complete fabrication.
Okay.
It never
Absolutely.
works that way.
Basement. Keep going, Joni.
And so
You've got this.
we sort of just understood at a certain point that we have to figure out how to do this, or get somebody to do it for us, and that was the path we ended up trying to take, was get somebody to do it for us. And we thought we had a good chance this time around, because we weren't asking for development funding. We were just looking for a marketing partner and that kind of thing, and we ended up finding one. And thanks to that experience, we got to see the whole process of taking a game from announcement to release and some of the post-release support and all of that, and we learned so much from seeing every step in that process.
This is a quaint house.
And we learned a lot about different kinds of deals and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, we just basically came to the point where we realized that the current publishing arrangement was not meeting our needs. It wasn't a fit for our needs and what we wanted to do. And so we took the step to moving towards self-publishing so that we can control our own destiny going forward. Now that we've learned all of these lessons, we can start to utilize that. We can bring on wonderful people like yourself and Mike, especially Mike, helping now as our director of publishing, director of operations and publishing. He's got a lot of that expertise and a lot of can pull in a lot of connections to help with things like.
He is in fact gregarious.
Yeah, Mike is very gregarious. But
As he's nodding in the game.
Yeah. You brought us Gary King's to do our accolades trailer just recently, and that was phenomenal. Mike brought us 50cc to help with some of the PR push right here around Steam Scream that we just went through, and got Greg an interview with But Why Though that just went up last night. Fantastic interview. People should go read it.
Absolutely.
And so having
love
some
the
of that
group
expertise,
at But Why Though. Just lovely people over there.
Yeah. I followed Kate for a while now on Blue Sky as well. So So yeah, basically now that we've
So
been
much
through
behind,
the production
don't we
steps
all?
Yeah.
and all the milestones that goes through, and now that we can bring in some of the expertise and the
Ugh,
connections and all
start my
of
own
that,
flea market with all the
controlling our
Amazon
own destiny,
tapes.
especially with that
Not
connected
my word.
anthology universe idea, and wanting to be able to have control over being able to bundle our games together in the future and
Yeah.
say, hey, if you bought Joni way before the next game came out and you're interested in the next game, you should get a discount on that game, like
100%.
sort of like a loyalty kind of thing.
Let's
Uh-oh.
Oh,
pause
let's
right
take
here
a
and watch
pause
this
right
guy.
here.
So this is actually one of the few moments where eventually we do end up
Your domain?
constraining the
This
player.
is
One,
my
because like
house.
we really need to make sure you stay in this area and you are looking at a certain thing. But it also it's
Oh
reinforcing
yeah.
the character moment
Afraid I'm
of like
breaking your little relics.
Joni is in the world being restrained and controlled in a distressing way by the Skull Man. And I think that over the course of the opening, that's kind of what's happening is like his tendrils are kind of getting deeper and deeper into her psyche to the point where
What?
we've reached an inflection point. And just the interesting, we call the mind visages, where he kind of flashes on the screen. We got that inspiration from Alan Wake 2, just like a little less intense
Emotions?
version of what they did. But it's still kind of doing our own thing of like,
remember.
this is a very kind
I
of
can't remember
psychically driven
what's happening to
experience,
me.
even though the haunting is like presented as very
Get
real.
out of here. I need
So you
to
could turn
get
and
out
try to
of
run
here.
if you want to, but then it's like your vision is going down, and it's again placing those elements of light writing in an area that if you turn and run, you have your own experience of like this guy is chasing you down, and this kind of panic of like, what am I supposed to do? I was like, can I lose this game? Can I die? Oh no! Like what the? And then we kind of get transitioned into this next area.
What's
Dang. Drama.
Drama. And since we just came from here, we didn't think it was that big of a jump for people to be disoriented too much. Of like, okay, like
Like,
Joni
oh, I
must
know
have
where
made
I
it
am now.
upstairs. Yeah, but like what happened during the blackout period, and like this is where
this place?
the element of like the lost memories is made very explicit. Like if you pick up on it,
Get away.
then you kind of get like, ooh, interesting, and like now it's really coming in. Or if you're seeing it for the first time, it can still work because you just had this dramatic experience in the basement, and now we're trudging back through, and the haunting is a lot less psychological, although that's still intense, and is much more present in the world of him becoming more manifest in the house. And the idea of like he's getting closer. What does that mean? Does that mean physically? Does that mean mentally? Like what is there's some supernatural component to that. So therefore we must find a supernatural solution. And luckily, we're in this really powerful family home that has a lot of magical history and a lot of magical support that can get her out of this. Where it's like, you have to go read the story. In Edith's story, the way that she escapes is a magical llama. And
As one
in
does.
this story,
Happening again.
yeah, as one does. And in this story, it's the house. If either of our main characters didn't have those elements, things might not have gone so well for them. And that's also why I really liked the element of the family and the house is the family in the house is how she overcomes the physical haunting. And that really interweaved in a interesting way, I thought, of kind of a multi-layered theming around the core element, which is the element of estranged family and reconnection.
Why?
Ooh, it's getting spooky. It's getting real spooky. Mike, are you okay?
I remember.
He's okay. You can kind of see him in the background
okay.
going, he's okay. Maybe. Goodness, where did we leave off? We're talking a little bit about, yes, so about creating our future, right? The future of our studio and kind of what led, the two of us to come join in the fun, quite frankly.
What now?
That's true. Yes, that's a very good opportunity. So we finished up Joni late last year. We released it in January, and we started figuring out, okay, what comes next. And as part of that, this time we kind of, we managed to make Joni off of the savings from contract work. And I think that another theme across the industry is that even co-development work has dried up for a lot of people. Contract work has dried up.
Yep.
I've got a good friend who who ran a co-development studio out of Vancouver, and they shut down. That's Anemone Hug, Christopher Langmuir.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah,
Wow.
they had to shut down because their work dried up too, and that's a prolific indie co-development studio.
Yeah.
Who are experts at what they do.
100%. They've been around for many years.
Yep, 15 or so.
Yeah, thereabouts. Thereabouts.
And I know Christopher's off to some very exciting ventures now as well that he hasn't talked about yet. He's hinted at, but
There's so much.
and so we kind of realized, well, that's not really going to be a great option, and attempting to and discoverability in the indie space for indie games is extremely difficult too. Getting eyes on a game. I mean, Joni has won awards. It has a 92% positive rating on Steam, and yet trying to get it in front of people is extremely difficult. We just had Game Tyrant the other day call it the epitome of a hidden gem. And that is kind of what it is. It's a hidden gem. But as a result, we kind of realized, well, we need to actually find some funding. Even if we're going to make another small game like Joni, something we can make in a very condensed time frame that doesn't take a ton of resources, it still takes some resources. We all still have to find a way to live. We have to find a way to feed ourselves, to put a roof over our head. We want to take care of the small team that we have working with us. And over the past couple of years, we got to know you and Mike at GDC. But the origin story is even better. Actually, I'm going to go into that for a moment, because when Greg and I started this studio, we each bought each other a book as a gift, and that book is the Game Dev Business Handbook by none other than
I know
Michael
that book.
We got each other
there they
these
are.
books. Yep. And those were our presents to each other as we started the studio, and we kind of, as we were trying to figure out the whole thing, and that was the same time I started listening to the Virtual Economy podcast by F Squared, hosted by Amanda Farough and Michael Footer. And then
us,
basically,
maybe.
that's these two.
Yeah, I think so.
And then I went to GDC in 2023, 2020.
She did it.
2024.
Her family deserved the
Right as we were
best
like
she could
trying to
provide.
pitch Joni to publishers, actually, and basically tried everything I was in the F Squared Discord at the time. Tried everything I could to meet up with the two of you, and we kept trying to make plans, and you kept like getting pulled off. And then one evening, like Wednesday evening or something, I'm in the food court just off of the gardens, and there I see you and Mike standing there talking to, I'm forgetting his name, but the long-haired ginger Viking man that is a streamer.
Oh, Will
Yes.
Overgaard. Yeah.
You're there talking to him, like, they're right there. They're right there. And I just came up and talked to you, and then kind of
I'm
like
so
the rest
glad
is
you
history
did.
in terms of hitting it off and everything. And then Greg came with me this year, and we got to hang out with you several times. And then the key to it all is basically we kind of got to this point in late April where we were still trying to pitch, but we just weren't having a ton of luck in terms of getting past inboxes and into actually read status. And Greg kind of just had this point of, he's like, what if we know that they've been wanting to, that they have sort of dreams of one day starting their own studio and everything. What if we just bring them in here? Because if we don't ask them, they've already said no. But if we do ask them, they might say yes. and it just all kind of came together of like, well, that's why didn't we think of it before? This is the obvious thing to try. And then we kind of, I mean, you all knew what our vision was already
Yeah.
anyway. We talked about, you'd helped shape it, whether you knew it or not. You had helped shape it, both through mentoring conversations that you had with me, but also through the Virtual Economy podcast and everything else. You had helped shape this vision of a sustainable studio that took care of its people, that didn't crunch, that had a 4-day work week, that that ships small games, that doesn't try to go for hyper growth in a world of venture
Number go up.
capitalism and number go up, thanks to Mike's excellent article in, was it IGN?
It was a Game Informer.
Game Informer, thanks to Mike's excellent Game Informer article from a couple months ago. Yeah, so you mean you knew all of that. You had a taste of what we were, of the type of stories we were telling already. We knew what kind of games you like and that kind of thing, and so we just ended up saying, hey,
It's these games. These are the games
What
I
do you-
like.
want to be friends?
That's true. We did have a lot of really lovely conversations at GDC where I'm like, these are my new best friends. And then I also accidentally, on purpose, made best friends with Greg's wife, Haley.
But she had her daughter.
So there were a lot of serendipitous moments that kind of led us to this point, and all of us kind of recognizing that we could find more success and we could find more. And success is kind of this nebulous thing, right? Like everyone defines success a little bit differently. I think about success in like 2 different ways. Did I make a friend? Cool. Did I make a fun thing? Cool. I succeeded. That's how I look at success. That's the way I've always been.
I think that's right on the money. Is I think none of us are looking to become hyper, rich out of this. It's like, if it happens, fine. But like the goal is like we like making these games. We like telling these experiences and crafting these stories. And we just want to keep doing that sustainably.
Exactly.
And like that's the goal. So like that's if we can keep doing that, then I think to your point, that is what success is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a fun little origin story. I completely forgot that the introduction came by way of the food court at the Metreon.
It was just this hilarious moment where I'm sitting there eating. I'm just kind of there on my own in the evening after everything is sort of quieted down, and I look up and it's like,
hey, wait a
That's them.
second. That's those two. It was amazing.
But yes.
And that's true. Mike and Kjartan did get to hang out at PAX West in 2024.
yeah. And so I will say that was a really
I wasn't there.
exciting thing. Yeah. Our publisher did take The Haunting of Joni Rivers to PAX West last year, and that was a very fun experience. I met several people who, I think at least a couple of who like literally fell in love with the game on the show floor. I have a photo. I have a photo of one person who was like, "This looks interesting," and she, kind of sits on the chair, puts the headphones in, and she ends up being just locked in for the entirety of the demo. It's my favorite photo from PAX West, even though it means nothing. It's just like it's my memory of this person who is just locked in and enraptured by the demo the entire time. I have a feeling she's in this Discord, though I don't think she's in this audience right now. But it was one of the most energizing things that I've ever had, of just like, okay, I now get to see it in person. This person, like somebody actually loves this thing that we made. And then Mike and I got to hang out. He got to I got to talk strategy. Honestly, it was another opportunity to talk strategy and get a lot of mentoring from Mike that has been invaluable for the past few years for me.
New and scary.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that we're here now. It's a beautiful thing. Hooray! Speaking of beautiful things, let's kind of like let's do some celebrations, right? As we're sitting here, we're trying to Mike's trying to finish up our restoration ritual. Let's talk about some of your favorite development stories. Things that went exceptionally well and you're like, how did that happen? And things that, you very intentionally made decisions about that turned out even better than you expected. I would love to hear from Greg first on this one. Unless Greg doesn't want to go first, in which case Greg doesn't have to go first.
I'll prompt
No,
Greg.
this is good.
Greg, you can talk about the restoration ritual. Because that didn't start as being a restoration ritual.
Oh, no.
No.
In a similar way of like throughout the game, the first couple chapters were completely rewritten for pacing. We used to have weird barriers that would pop up and block you into spaces. We ended up repurposing that texture for the portal texture. Those were originally kind of ghostly barriers that felt a little bit too gamey and a little bit too contrived for kind of keeping you in a particular area to do something.
Sure.
But then with this back half, we knew we wanted to have like a restoration ritual of you have now broken these things. Now you must use through the power of the house and the vestiges and the positive reframed memories. You're restoring what you've broken. So you're physically addressing the haunting and also metaphorically addressing the haunting at the same time. And originally it was just the key objects. And I think originally the idea was to have like more of like a physical puzzle where
like
there would be
furniture.
Yeah, and it was like physical connections between
Oh.
objects, and it was like it was still the idea of positive and negative emotions. Like that was still core to it, but it was like, how does that get manifested?
I cared about this place more than anyone.
But that didn't really,
Grandma saw.
again, it felt too out of place. It felt like it was a game mechanic for a game mechanic's sake.
Remember.
And then we had, in the beginning, we had this idea of these memory points of like
Fear that her granddaughter would
objects or
make the same choices her
points on
daughter did.
objects that kind of contained, it's like, how real are they? How in Joni's mind are they? But it's like
On the house,
looking
on
at
the
something
family,
from a certain perspective
on me.
kind of triggers this more magical psychic connection in one way or another. And it's like, okay,
You did it,
we
Mike.
can use that mechanic, and we can then repurpose all these objects that you have gone through and seen throughout the game. One, just for an economical standpoint of being able to not have to create a whole new set of things for the back half.
Oh, sure.
But also it's like here, it's like it works narratively because it's the beginning of the memory that she has that's negative, but instead of turning negative, she sees things through a new light. Through all these objects that we're seeing, and what that allowed us to do was to dive so much deeper, I think, into the characters of not having physical characters present, of being able to dig deeper into that through more touch points, more objects. We can go into more detail. We can bring up different memories or different perspectives that she's having. That was originally much more pared down. So, and that was something we decided, we're like, this is not interesting. This needs more interesting stuff. It doesn't have enough gas to drive the back half of the game. And so we came up with the restoration ritual as it is. And,
I don't understand.
it is what it is. It's nothing that's like groundbreaking. And it's
But
just
it's very
focusing
evocative at the same
on the
time,
core
even if it's
mechanic.
not.
Yeah.
Even if it's not mechanically groundbreaking. The first time that I experienced that as a player, I remember getting goosebumps.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's more going on, I think, in your mind, especially the first time you play it,
Of course.
trying to figure out what exactly is this puzzle.
You'll be okay,
and
Mikey.
yeah,
You
so
can keep going.
The haunting, the Skullman's getting closer and closer here.
It'll be okay.
Especially
Oh,
since
he
the
doesn't
last
like
time you
it.
looked
He's
in that,
just he's
in
just
that
gonna
room.
close all the doors.
Yeah.
He's had enough of this.
So yeah, I think that's something that certainly went well, because whenever you introduce a new mechanic or decide that something needs more, it doesn't always go smoothly if you decide to make that decision in the middle of production. So that went well.
And at the same time, I do think that one, while like we added a mechanic and did a more complicated mechanic, I think Greg in particular did a really fantastic job of making that new mechanic extremely economical. Like he said, we reused everything. There's no new objects for it, all that kind of stuff. And now suddenly as the programmer, I'm not having to worry about, well, like I said, the original mechanic had to do with moving furniture around to block sightlines between objects. And like so you had to block the sightlines from the
Sarah
negative
played
objects
this?
to the restoration point
No,
or
that's
something.
not
And you had to open up the sightlines from the positive ones. And
It
now
just
I
seemed
don't
to
have to worry
detract.
about it kind of distracted, but also like I
Sarah
didn't have to worry about, well, we have
went
to have
to
moving furniture
college?
now. We have to be
Yeah.
able to interact with furniture from different sides to move it in different directions, and also the lighting has to play nice with all of this. Like we have all this beautiful baked lighting, and
Oh
so
yeah, the
there are
lighting is
some.
Smells like
gorgeous in this
Farough.
game.
It's beautiful, and the more dynamic objects we have, the more we actually have to take away from how beautiful that lighting is.
Before we leave this room, I do want to call out, just like, because we didn't talk about it beforehand, all the really cool posters that Bree made that are kind of references to, they're like our own parody bands that exist in the worlds across the causeway, but they're all these kind of custom made band posters that are
remember
references
anything.
that would, I think, speak to the kind of person that Sarah is and people who might relate to Sarah as well. So that was something that I think was really cool about her space, where all these posters were custom made and inspired.
know what a
So I wanted to call that
cryptid
out while we're
is.
still in this space.
Just
I do
can't
really love
think
Sarah's
straight.
room. It reminds me a lot of what my room was like when I was, well, albeit like thrice bigger than my teenage room, but the vibe is immaculate. Absolutely reminds me of all the hours I used to spend decorating my walls with all my favorite bands and, you know, a Lord of the Rings poster just for good measure.
Of course.
Obviously. Are you okay, Mike? You don't want to go that way? No, you got to go that way though.
Oh,
It'll be okay.
we can't hear it because of the subdued volume, but there's some thumping on the door there.
Oh, there definitely is. He doesn't want to. And I'm not over
And
there,
if
so
folks,
I
we
can't
put, we
hold his
put it in the
hand.
chat. But if folks, you can control the stream volume if you go to the three dot option on the bottom right of the stream, and you can kind of control it if you want to hear more of our voices or less of our voices. Just as another reminder.
It's gonna
for
be
how
okay,
you want to
Mikey.
listen to it.
There you go.
I remember.
He was so nervous.
Oh, this was important to Sarah.
Oh, and there's Sarah.
Sarah.
I think
I know you, but
uh,
oh, there's so much missing.
the spectral writing system and everything highlights another lovely constraint, but also some of Greg's wonderful writing. Because if we're going to have all this writing and things that appears, we have to keep it really short.
Of course.
We had a really tight character
Right.
constraint for Greg in terms of like you can only put like 5 words.
Keep it
can't-
short, but also like make all the characters different and make them interesting and make them come across. And like it is a good challenge, but like yeah, it is.
But also,
it
it's
is
a challenge nonetheless.
Yeah, but I think honestly, I think the person where it shines the most is Sarah, because Greg has all these wonderful moments
Right.
where he forsakes
might be in
words, and he instead talks the way that Sarah would in the dialogue, where like exclamation points, or you know, there's a point later in the game where.
You're holding an object, Mike. You can't pick up other objects while you're holding that object.
It's a perfect example of the vestiges being a little bit talkative. We don't want you to pick up objects while the vestige is trying to say something to you and that kind of thing. So honestly, a great example of one of those spots where we're just a little bit overzealous on no, you have to see what the vestige has to say. We're not going to let you pick something up until you've seen what the vestige has to say.
And again, overzealous is subjective because it's
Exactly.
like it depends on like you have to have the stuff in the game has to happen, right? It's just like there are constraints within a system, otherwise they're like, for example, it's like, well, what if I want to leave the house and run down the street into the darkness until I reach the bookstore? I'm like, that is something that you theoretically could do, but that's not within, in a game design term, the magic circle of what's going on in this game. And so it's like trying to find all those balances. Like there are going to be moments where the friction is higher for some people than other places, and it's just making sure that that friction never rises to a high enough degree for anyone where that's just the nature of interactive media, right?
Yeah.
So just trying to ensure that no one experiences anything that's too frustrating. And it just kind of, we all let things go all the time in different kinds of games that we play. It's just making sure that it is something that you're willing to let go and is not like a rage quit moment.
Absolutely.
But I think one of my favorite things of how it came together is talking about development stories and things that came together. I think is sort of the vestiges and their behavior and how they interact with the player and everything else. For me, that's one of my favorites, because it kind of kept evolving. Like I said, we started with we're just going to implant messages onto the screen, and then we end up with this world-based system that is really reactive to the player. But then we also have all these vestiges who behave a little bit differently. So, as we come out of this, Mike will turn around and he'll see Sarah's right there in his face, because Sarah's just like, she's the little sister. She's like hanging on. She's really excited, like wants to help and wants to be there. But like, that's definitely given. I know we've seen some folks turn around and be like, oh my God, there's Sarah. Wow.
She's
then,
like right there.
She's right there. Because she's invested. She's like, and then some of the other vestiges will follow it a little bit more of a distance, because they're kind of letting you do your own thing or whatever it is. But then also when you're in conversation with the vestiges, the way they try to stay in front of you, and like they're having a conversation with you, they're telling you things, but they're making sure they're staying in sight, and no matter where you go, they're kind of dynamic in that sense. So a lot of the way that came together made the vestiges feel alive, and it was a very iterative process, but yeah, brought them to life, and I think that was one of my favorite things.
I love that. Anything else kind of standing out as unexpected successes or celebrations? Because now we got to talk about the challenges.
I wouldn't say it's unexpected, but I would say
even when I wasn't there,
like a delightful meeting of expectations, or maybe exceeding of expectations, is the voice acting. And
I love the voice acting in this game.
With Kelly Picar, and through Laura Shakas, who we work with to cast, just how great that experience was. It was done completely remotely. We had to use like this podcasting software, which is really great for making sure that you don't lose audio. In the first one that we did, we used a previous software and we lost like an entire session's worth because it was terrible. But it's just like there's so many things that can go wrong, and even I love working with actors, and I love the process of kind of that collaborative manifestation of writing and then acting and then directing and then finding something, and then it's like putting it in and getting it in context. It's this, you have to go through a lot of steps before you really see it, so you kind of have to see it in your mind's eye first. And so it's really nice that what you kind of see it to be ends up coming true whenever it could go off the rails or not quite come together, because there are so many production steps you have to go through to get it to a spot where it feels interesting, and like I was saying earlier, like high fidelity, of like you have a high fidelity product where it's really good acting, it's really good audio quality, it's it's working with the gameplay, like you're hearing it when you want to hear it, and it's conveying this story. And so I would say all of that went incredibly well, I think, and there's nothing bad about that entire experience. So as you always get nervous when you go into those moments, but yeah.
I just to add to that, I think a lot of the reason why we can say like that it met or slightly exceeded our expectations is kind of because of the amount of experience that you in particular have with it. I mean, we recorded voice actors for that first game project, that Vertical Slice that we worked on, but also you had done at 3 games with voice acting at Tesseract, and so like you have
of a much higher scale. We're talking
the scope
we're
was
talking
wild.
scores of characters.
Oh.
Like it was a straight up like AAA production in terms of 20 hours of gameplay. Like I've recorded and directed massive. It was this ancient Roman game, and I like that game a lot. But moly, holy moly,
I
that was a
bet.
lot. That was a lot. But to your point, like I have had that experience. So it's just like, yeah, working with one actor is not that intimidating because I've worked with 40 before. So
Yeah, and but it comes back to that of like Greg has gone through the process of writing something, transferring it to gray boxes, having it show up just as subtitles, eventually recording dialogue, putting that dialogue in together with some music and seeing it all to come together. And so like there is an element of, I think for Greg and now partially for me, of once we see a couple of those constituent parts, we can start to at least see the dotted line of how they are going to come together and what at least sort of a baseline version of that experience is going to be, which makes us feel a little bit better early in pre-production when we don't have voice lines yet and stuff like that. We just have subtitles on the screen. It's like, okay, no, I've got a pretty good idea of like, okay, there's going to be that voice, and that's going to like kind of go at this cadence and that kind of thing.
there's a gut feeling intuition where you can kind of tell, ugh, this is off. Or like, oh no, like this will come together. And it's challenging when you're making a game like this that it has mechanics, but it's narrative forward, and the mechanics are not twitchy or you can't prototype them in a way that it's easy to tell, is this going to be fun or not? Because a lot of that fun is dependent upon how does it look? What's the actual flow and the pacing? What is being said? Like you can't prototype it in the same way that you would like a strategy game or a first person shooter where you can throw together a mechanical programmed prototype and get a sense of, is this fun or not? Great, now let's build on top of it.
Right.
That's a unique challenge. I thought that also to round out this section went really well of it came together the way that I was hoping it would come together, when it's really hard to verify that up front when you don't have a lot of the bells and whistles that take
Sure.
time in production to make or implement.
Absolutely. That makes good sense to me. And it also, from my perspective anyway, speaks to the talent at Causeway.
I remember
So,
Well, thank you.
laughter.
you're welcome.
You can hear the discomfort in his voice.
I know. I always forget. I forget sometimes that that's a measure of discomfort. I'm just so used to complimenting everybody. We're going to let Mike get through this section, and then we're going to talk about some challenges and things that you wish you would have known at the beginning of the process, and that we will be taking into the next process.
That's not true.
The next process.
Coped in different ways. I see.
Yeah, Sarah's my girl.
I'm sorry, I was more worried.
She's
about
Everyone
definitely
loves
my
Sarah.
girl.
parent than
Yeah.
Yeah.
being your sister.
The person who ran the gameplay that's currently on our currently broadcasting on our Steam page, it's Chris Bro is her YouTube name.
Not much.
Sarah is her favorite character. She absolutely loves Sarah.
I suppose I need to go downstairs.
Sarah's pretty dope.
Talk to him now.
I'm pretty sure Sarah's my favorite character too.
She's got all these great little moments. I mean, it's gone now. It's sort of faded into this camera, but the overalls that she had have a couple of really fun patches. One of which got turned into the stickers is on the camera itself.
Yeah.
On the camera,
Preservation Society.
I remember
And then there's mention of the co-op coven and things like that. So there's a lot of good, fun stuff. You can see a lot of Noreen and Sarah, which is really fun.
Absolutely. All right, so while Mike is traipsing down the stairs towards Colson's studio, let's start to talk about some of the challenges. You know, because making games is hard. Mike and I have said for years that every game is a miracle, and that shipping a game is monumental undertaking. It doesn't matter how big, how small, how much money it is. Games are a monumental undertaking. But there are
Games
always
shouldn't
challenges.
exist.
Games should not exist. They should
Where'd
not.
your painting go?
They are just, yeah, the games should not exist. That's actually the realest statement. I'm gonna take that with me.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
They
There's
shouldn't
no way they
exist.
should.
No.
No logical
Yeah.
reason for it.
There's no logical reason for art in general, but definitely not for video games. Video games should not exist. They're a mess.
There you are.
So let's talk about some of the challenges and like some of the development stories that have led us to making different decisions as we are starting to move towards our next game.
I'll start with one. I mentioned earlier that goal that we had of no loading screens and a seamless experience from chapter 1 to chapter 12.
I remember.
Oh boy, did that come? Did I bit off what I could barely chew on that.
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't have to deal with that at all. So that seemed like it went well to me.
I remember.
I just had to say, let's do this.
Yeah. I'm still like I'm still incredibly glad that we made that decision because I love how seamless the game is. But oh boy, the performance considerations of that. I mean, I talked earlier about how we stream parts of the house in and out at different times.
Rob was a good-spirited dad.
And, you know, we've already shown some
Understood the
of
true
that
value of art.
acknowledgement of player expression where you go through the portal puzzle in chapter 5 and then you can go back and check, wait a minute, that statue, is that still there in Sarah's closet?
Dad
Because
wasn't willing to sacrifice
it was following me
family for
around, and then we tell you no, it's not
no
there.
regrets
Or there's
And-
possible you might not even see the statue
of his potential.
in when you go through that portal. Like it really is. It's like you may never come across it. It just depends on if you go looking for it.
Yeah. And, you know, so moments like that where, like, you know, we started the whole house always loaded at all times, which is an absolute performance nightmare. And then we started splitting it up, and then we realized, oh, we got to reload. Like, you know, the original thinking was we're going to be fine when we move on to chapter 5 so we can unload the stuff from chapter 4. We don't need Sarah's room and the game room anymore. And then we're like, well, what if we want to acknowledge the player going back and investigating the statue? Okay, well, now we need it again. And we sort of have these moments throughout the game where we want to acknowledge things and that. So managing the memory load, we have this whole, not only do we unload sections that are far away and sort of clear up memory that way, but rendering is also a concern. If you're rendering too many objects with high resolution textures or too many lights that are going on or reflection probes or all these beautiful things that make the lighting so good and everything so atmospheric, Unity's
Wait, what if you threw in another camera that we need to see through portals to like also complicate that scenario?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
I actually just discovered a rendering bug that's been in the game since the beginning a week and a half ago while preparing this latest update. I'll tell you about that in a moment. But it's because it's attached to what I'm about to say, which Unity's built in. So there's a thing that's referred to as occlusion culling, which basically is you can save a bunch of information that says, here are the objects you can't see from any given position, so graphics cards don't even try to render them. That doesn't work when you have all of these different parts that get added and removed and streamed in and out from memory depending on where you are, because it only works if everything's loaded at the same time. And so instead we had to build a custom system that basically and it operates on a room by room basis. So basically, if you're far enough outside of Colson Studio, if Colson Studio is loaded but you're not anywhere where you'd be able to open the door, it tells this Colson Studio, don't render anything, don't even try, because you can't see it anyway.
It really is cross-disciplinary because you really have to be thinking about, like, it's not just, well, we're just going to design the house however we want it and then hope that that can be managed. It's like, no, you have to be thinking about what is visible at what time so that you're not putting yourself in an unsolvable position as well. And that requires the cross communication about what are all these instances in which you can or cannot visit these locations in what seems like a linear game, but in which there's a lot of possibilities
Yeah.
that in edge case scenarios.
Yeah, and then the portals threw a wrench into that as well, because this is the rendering bug that I didn't realize was.
Where he and his daughters
So
can
there's
journey
sort of that front
forever
sitting room just
without
outside
a
of
care in
Colson
all the
Studio that has
world.
the stairs up to the second
It's
floor.
fleeting.
And
Yes.
that one has a similar
nice.
thing on it, where if you're not in a position where you'd be able to see it anyway, we tell it, don't bother trying to render any of it to the screen. And the bug that I found just a week and a half ago, so it's been in the game for 9 months, and at least nobody mentioned it. They may have seen it. It was I was not accounting for the portal cameras. So if you were on the kitchen side of the portal and you looked through the portal and you angled yourself just right,
I remember.
you should have been able to see the sitting room, but instead you could see straight through the sitting room, straight through the studio, because that also wasn't rendering, all the way to Joni's room. Like you had an X-ray view all the way to Joni's room
Oh.
from the kitchen through a portal, because we were not
Oh,
accounting
no.
for that view to render the sitting room.
Forgiveness doesn't.
Huh.
So we ended up with, you know, those kinds of weird edge case scenarios and all this stuff, but it all in service of, we have to make sure that we're not overloading memory, because I mean, honestly, we actually just got a huge improvement in that now. I don't think memory ever goes over
Alone.
8.5 or 9 gigabytes of what's held if at any point in the game if you're on high quality, versus I think before it could get up to about 12. So we actually just made some big improvements on that. But there's that, and then there's the, you can't be rendering too much that can't be seen anyway. There's all these reflection probes, and so we even take very special care to turn them off if they can't be seen, and those contribute a lot to lighting. Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest challenges, was managing performance and managing frame rates throughout. Oh my goodness! And then hilariously, Unity's high definition render pipeline has this big issue with shaders and shader variants. I mean, we even saw it at the beginning of the stream. We have this shader compilation screen, and if we don't have that in there, and honestly, there are actually a few things that are missed in it. I just can't seem to track them down. But there are things that when you pick them up, they will cause a brief stutter. Because Unity is then realizing, this is the first time I have to do this. Let me send the shader to the graphics card so that it can get compiled properly for this unique hardware, and then it'll show. But that can take, 100 to 150 milliseconds, which is a 1 to 2, maybe 3 frame drop, which kind of sucks.
It's significant enough, not like
yeah,
brain breaking, but significantly enough.
But it's really frustrating for sure. And the solution for it is, in my head, hilarious, because we have this shader compilation screen. Big black screen, little progress bar says compiling shaders. What's actually happening behind that full black screen is, I tried to grab manually by hand as many of the unique visual objects in the game, copy them to actually 6 separate scenes that get loaded one after another, so again we don't overload the memory, and it just rotates through as quickly as possible, rendering one at a time, sending it to the graphics card, so the graphics card knows, here's how I render this thing, here's how I render this thing, here's how I render this thing. So it already knows when you actually discover them in the game. So it's just this rapid flashing of different objects from the game. So like the painting, that table, all the cupboards, the doors, the walls, the floors, the ceilings, all the books, all the little things are all just rendered one at a time, super quickly behind a black screen, in order to compile all of those shaders.
That's a lot. That's a
You
lot.
haven't told
You
me that in a
definitely,
long time.
man. So what did you learn?
I learned that
Are
you have to
you
do
really
that kind of
here?
thing.
Okay.
It's ridiculous.
That's what I would point out is like I
Or
think that
something?
you hear stories like that all the time in the game industry of like sometimes it's brute force stuff or sometimes it's
Oh.
like sometimes the solution is
So
not
you're
this well architected,
conscious
well thought
memories?
out, best practice, you know, in terms of like programming or whatever. Sometimes
But how?
you have to do it, I think, quick and
Why have
dirty.
I
I think
never
what we
seen you
might
before?
learn is like try to anticipate when those things might happen more.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, it's just like, oh, okay. It's like,
So
not that
just
we don't,
byproducts?
so that whenever you're solving it that way, you're solving it that way
I'm
because you
sorry.
thought about
I'm
that as
trying
the
to
best,
understand.
most economical solution that creates the best experience up
If the
front,
Skullman did
rather
this,
than like,
or brought you here,
we need to fix this.
even if he didn't mean
We're
to,
already in the hole.
does
So
that
we need to
mean
figure out a way to get out of
he's
the
in
hole
control?
rather than like, okay, we know we're going to go in the hole, but like we already have this ladder that we've made, or
Can
we
we
like
fight back?
thrown a rope down there. Um,
Oh, great. What
just
are we waiting for?
as more of a high level outside observer to the more technical stuff. It's like I'm aware of that stuff, but that's something that I think would pop out to me. But I don't know, Shortan, does that resonate with you as well, or is there something that you would take away from that differently?
No, that's pretty accurate. It's basically it's so much of game development becomes a question of
Mike, you
what
love
is
those closets.
it's got to check every closet.
It's just got to go in all the
He's
Um,
closets.
still here.
it is
We haven't fixed
you
anything yet.
always have to find the right solution given all of the specific constraints of this unique situation that you're in. And so in this case, I learned very quickly that, oh, okay, this has to do with shader variance.
Got
Is,
this.
in order to make rendering super performant,
Yeah, I put that together.
HDRP
And
Unity
even the
creates
best
all of
edge
these
can't be
different,
bothered.
very unique shader
Did
variants
she
for whether or not you have a
even leave
normal
the
map on
best
an
edge
object, or
behind?
whether or not an object is lit by a spotlight versus a point light. And like, it is wild how much stuff it branches out and creates separations for instead of having a single thing that actually has branching logic in order to be performant. And I have a computer science degree. I started my career
Oh, I
as a
remember
software
this.
engineer,
Mom
but
always kept
oh
it
boy, I
close.
am not that detailed in the weeds graphics
This is another moment where he
engineer.
teleports you.
Yeah, actually, yes, thank you,
Oh,
Greg. This is a different living room.
What did you
It's
do?
completely
50 meters
different?
above the house.
Where's my
It's a
family?
copy of the living room. It's a copy of like the living room
We
and
just
the surrounding
teleport
rooms.
you at
Why
the
not?
moment the lights turn out.
Let's go up.
Yeah.
It's
And,
fine.
and it's going to be the
Where
same thing
are they?
when the lights come back on. We're teleporting you right back down because coming back to the lights that Bree did so well is we needed them to look good, and they wouldn't look as
Damn it.
good if they were real time.
What do I
Yeah.
do now?
And we have a
That's
really
fair.
good kind of yo sound from Gustavo that
supposed
kind
to
of
do
like
with
just
this?
makes you believe that the lights are turning on whenever it's just like more of just like a you know thing. Just you're just flipping a switch between where you are spatially.
Yeah. So yeah, but I am not that in the weeds graphics engineer. I am not the person who can write a whole thing that helps you break down and
Who's
identify
that?
shader variants that can be combined if you just add an empty normal map to this object or whatever. Instead, I had to say, and I think I got this in
Look at all these memories.
a month before we shipped. I
This
think
could
like we had we had
Oh.
other solutions that kind of worked, that they were kind of covering for things, but we were just still hitting too many moments that were just like, well, now like we have to figure out a way to
Sarah
add this
slept
to our
here when
solution,
she was
whatever.
an infant.
And I kind of just I ended up
Wouldn't let
scrapping the
her
whole
out
because
of
I
her
was trying
sight.
to I actually to Greg's point, I was trying to use a complicated
Mom
system
had
that
a
somebody had
fairly
built.
successful
A
run as
well
an author.
architected, nice
That,
system that
too,
somebody had
earned
made. That was
scores.
like you just have to play through the game and you
Hard to keep her
basically
pinned behind a
record
desk when
all the
you're
shaders you see and then you store them to this file and then you give it to Unity. And the problem was actually we were storing
Mom?
too many shaders and Unity was trying to tell
Are you
players'
kidding me?
computers,
Of all the people I
hey,
get stuck with at the most
preload all of these
crucial
shaders at
moment,
once,
I
and it was
get
crashing
you.
people's computers.
Do you really,
And that's
Mom?
where we came to
So
the
it's
other
Is it
the
less
solution
balance.
instead. Yeah, is balance of like, well, you know what? Scrap it all,
Fine.
brute force, one at a time, as fast as we possibly can. Actually, I think it technically does five at a time, but not an important detail. Like it's just brute force, figure out what can I do within the constraints, within what I know how to do. And you know, there's plenty of other stuff to polish up with a month to go before release. We had some bugs and things like that. We were trying to get in some final polish of making things look nice and having all the right effects play at all the right times and having them all look beautiful and all that kind of stuff. So the brute force solution was what worked.
You don't want to create a spaghetti situation where everything is brute force and it's making it a nightmare to kind of go back and do things. But sometimes that is what matters is the experience that players are having.
Yeah.
And so if you have a solution that can do that, that will allow you to better focus on the fidelity of things overall.
Sounded just like one. No one could tell the difference.
Yeah, but that's where it takes experience and wisdom, and sometimes you're wrong, to kind of know when that is. And so I think that's such an ongoing challenge, I think, of game development that you should never feel like you have solved, because when you do that, something will jump up from the tall grass and get you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That is the nature of game development.
And then we try to record these things and store away the scripts and the systems in case we need to use them on the next project. And allegedly, Unity's got a better system for recording shaders and uploading them and stuff now with Unity 6.0.
Well, we'll have
or
to
I
see
think
then.
technically in 6.2. We'll see. Allegedly, we might just go back to this brute force solution.
You know, as long as it works and it's performant, you gotta do what you gotta do.
My favorite game dev story that's not ours is always the train hat in one of the Fallout games.
Yeah, I could hear Mike in the background.
Gotta go without a mic.
Yeah. That's great.
I want a train hat.
No train hat for you.
Dang.
Just stay locked in, man. You keep walking past stuff.
Wait, but they're not glowing red.
They are.
They definitely are.
What?
Are you low key becoming colorblind like our son?
Maybe.
Maybe.
He's been running it nonstop here. He's been doing a
He's doing
good job.
great.
It's just an element of
Is this
just
red?
doing it one after
No,
another.
that's not red. That's not red. I'm really proud of you, but no, that's not red. Maybe try that one though.
It's
I'm gonna
red.
step away for 45 seconds really quickly.
All good.
Okay. What else we got, Amanda? Are there any other
Well,
questions
yeah,
on the
you
doc?
gotta talk to me about some challenges now too. What do you wish that you would have known at the beginning, narratively, when you were starting to pull this game together, that you wish you would have known at the beginning?
Prepared for any situation.
And maybe even something that we're going to be a learning for the next game that we're working on.
I remember.
I think it's elements of, like, I always say I hate pre-production, because the process, for me, there's just so much pressure of getting everything you decide creatively, everything you write, everything you come up with. There's a lot of freedom and excitement to that in terms of I get to decide, I get to say but I get
But, like,
I get
constraints,
to sew,
though.
I get to sew, and then you're like, oh no, now I gotta reap.
Oh man. I gotta
so
say the
I think
worst
it's
part of the creative process is the
Is
reaping.
reaping.
It's the reaping.
This, by the way, this item right here is a direct reference to that same previous game. So it's like, Dad designed a game. Grandma used to tell tales. These were all locations in this unreleased vertical slice game. So it's like sprinkling in all these other things. So that was another reference right there. In terms of challenges, I think it's going back to some of the things I've already talked about how, like, we had to rewrite and redo the first couple chapters because they were just boring, or they were too the pacing was off, or we didn't have enough space to convey that sense of easing into the fantasy of a normal, life. Like it's not really a fantasy, but again, it's like setting that expectation.
Absolutely.
Elements of, the restoration ritual. It's like, designing the restoration ritual gameplay and getting it in and having that work, big success. Challenge, you don't want to have to do that because it may not always work out that way, especially in a game that's maybe a little more complexness and more dependencies. And so I think it's just understanding that there's always you can't be perfect, you can't be complete, but that the process of thinking, writing, designing, all the kinds of stuff that's more just on paper, it is not like in the editor. Sometimes it can feel like if you're not doing something that is
Mom invited us to come
presenting
along.
something that you can
What was she
actually
thinking?
see
Raise a
something
family
happen
road.
in
She
engine,
genuinely thought
that
Dad
it's
might say
not
yes.
as valuable,
She wanted him to say yes.
or that it's simply spin up time to the real work, quote unquote. And it's like reframing that of like, no. If you think about and treat that
Dad got this
mental
picture.
work, the writing
He'd
work, the
take it
prep
outside
work,
and
the
record
pre-production
little birds, trees,
as
his own thoughts.
equally,
He'd bring it
and
back
again,
to
it's like
Mom,
intellectually
who'd
you
write
do,
with
but
him.
like it's this experiential,
only thing they
emotional
kept her
reaction.
sane.
I think
She
that
took her writing more
you take the
seriously.
pressure off yourself a little bit. And when I say like one, you're getting a lot of stuff done as you're working through knowing that production is production, games take time and whatnot. But it just reduce the beating yourself up for no good reason because you're not seeing an outcome that looks the way you might expect progress to look.
Sure.
Reframing that through a lens of wisdom instead of a lens of reactionary emotion or intellectual yet
Oh, she took it on
without
every trip, big or
context
small.
Sure.
understanding.
Anytime Mom got scared, she'd look at this compass and felt some
I gotta chew on that
unforeseen
for a
force
second.
guide
That's
her, giving her
that's a lot of really
courage.
good wisdom and nuggets
She
of
knew
information for
she'd
me.
adventure her
I
entire
like that.
life. Like
Let's you know what? Let's take a little step back because we've talked about the house. We've talked a little bit about the characters. You know what you know who we haven't we talked about? We haven't talked much about Lilith.
The room that we're in right now,
Yeah, we
The
have. Yeah.
master bedroom.
Yeah.
What do we want to know about Lilith?
So honestly, like because we're seeing Lilith through Joni's eyes, right? And obviously Joni has very strong feelings about her mother because her mother left. And, you know, therefore Joni had to become kind of this de facto eldest daughter / mother situation for Sarah and, you know, always having to fight those battles.
Mom never knew her
Who
father,
inspired
but
Lilith?
Grandma Noreen did her
Where did
best
Lilith's
to never
character
let his
come
memories
from?
die. She inspired Mom through
That's a
stories
good
and
question.
travels.
I don't know if any
Never
one particular
herself.
thing
She owed it to
inspired
her dad to
Lilith. I think
continue
it was
family
more
business.
as we were talking about some of the
Grandma Noreen
character,
would
like
understand.
the structuring of how do we
How
build
she
out the
raised her, after
characters
all.
near the beginning, is looking at Joni as the core character and kind of what her strengths are and what her weaknesses are.
Sure.
How do each of the family members challenge that or examine that thematically in like a meta narrative way, interestingly, while also having the characters be three-dimensional and like exist outside of the theming
Just the two of
that
us.
they're meant to represent. And so I think it was an element
I
of
got this after
just kind of
surviving the paranormal
thinking about one kind of
investigator's
getting
tour
to the
at
suite
Holler
of the family.
Spring
Okay, we know the
Hotel.
family members. Like, okay,
We come
what
back
could all these
every
family
year.
members do?
The way
And I think it was an
she and my mom
interesting
used to.
element of, well, what if we had an absent mother instead of an absent father? And what if that absent parent is not what you usually think of an absent parent? What if it's not like, oh,
Mom
the father
had
ran
dad,
off
his
because
beloved
he
camcorder.
just didn't want to
She
do
had a
that
knack for
anymore
seeing
and he
people
can
for who
just
they
go off
really
and
were.
it's more
Find the
complex
gift
than
you
that. It's like,
didn't
what
know
if
you
we
needed, the
compound,
piece of you
okay, mother,
you didn't know was
compound,
missing.
what if she has a reason? Whether or not people agree with it or not is one thing, but it's contextual, and then it's like, okay, now we have something, because then that's the characterizing lens that the entire game gets put through, and kind of having her be the main focus of Joni's ire, I think helped shape the other characters in the way that they may have upset Joni, or the ways in which they didn't upset her as much as her mother,
Right.
and framed this as interesting of like, on the surface,
Dad couldn't believe
the
I
Skull
put it
Man is
together
the
all by
antagonist
myself.
of the game. He is the main opponent.
Mom could.
And that's still true to a
She
certain
knew
sense
this
in
was
terms
my
of the
shit.
plot. But like
Even
the
before
real
I did.
opponent in terms of the characters that clash and challenge each other,
What is
the
this?
real opponent's really Lilith.
Money
And the
and
real like final
mean,
boss
I'll
of the
take it,
game
but
is happening
this
right
isn't
now.
big, Mom.
It's
is.
it's the emotional reconciling of
Regret?
whatever you tell yourself. I'm never going to forgive
Bundle
that
of
person. I'm never going to get over
contradictions
this,
impossible to untangle.
no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And then you're presented with different information, and all of a sudden, you
remember a
are
desire for
challenged
freedom.
in what that
Not
is.
for Mom, but
And
for
I
me.
think that is
She hoped I
something
live my
that
life
was
the way
really
I
really
wanted.
interesting, and kind of
The same
you
way she
get the
had.
core of that,
Why
and then
didn't she just give this to
iteratively
me?
as you develop, once you
I
know
don't
what your
understand.
North Star is for anything, then you don't have to get it all written in one go per se.
Sure.
It's just,
These are
is this
positive.
one step further?
All
Are you
of these memories
stacking
and
days?
emotions are
Is today
positive?
1% further along better than
Oh,
the
you
next
were
day
so happy
in
here,
terms
happy with
of
us.
compiling what we're
I
doing
don't
here?
understand.
Looks like we get maybe a little bit of freeze action.
I think we might have, yeah. What's going on over there, Mike?
Yeah, Mom, I'm mad.
Honestly,
I don't
Oh.
understand.
that's pretty
That's okay. We're
You
good
are
now.
Oh,
happy here.
Game freeze.
Happy
fantastic.
with us.
I was
Not a
like, that's
game
honestly
freeze.
the
Not a
first
game
major
freeze.
thing we've
You
had in
still
a live
left.
live demonstrations. Or you're always going to have
Aw, there's the
these
I'm
moments,
sorry.
but I had to. But it's like also here, it's like when Joni tells her, it's like that's not good enough.
It can't
And
be.
she's like, but I get it. And so it's,
I
I
remember
came in with a specific,
Mother.
and also it's like they're very similar in a lot of ways. And that's another thing that Joni doesn't really like is they're a lot alike in a lot of ways. And so is it also like, am I hating my mother, or is there elements of some self-hate going on here, and kind of being able to pull that apart? But my narrative goal with this was basically by the end of the game to have players like as a community not be able to reach a consensus on how they felt about Lilith, where some people might be, you know what, I get it. I kind of understand where she's coming from. It may not have been what I would have done, or maybe I would have done that, or like I totally get it. And other people are like, I get that's complicated, but look at what that decision did to Joni.
Yeah.
And I can't forgive her for that. And I think that Joni reaches a place where she is open to reconnection and forgiveness, but it's not clean. And I think I think what's so special about the narrative design of this game, and hopefully what we'll be doing in the future as well, is that it creates well-textured, well-rounded stories and characters that people take away what they will from that. People are going to come away with different experiences and different opinions. Because like I said, I wasn't happy, but I also wasn't. It's not good enough. I know. It's like, it's this satisfying, unsatisfactory resolution.
Can you help me?
It's satisfying because it is these threads that you can't tie back up, and you wish you could tie them back up, but there's this pathos that is you can I think out of your emotions by having that and wishing that. And it's not a tragedy, but it's also not a fairy tale either, but there are elements of and yet there's still a happiness, there's still a potential, there's still a future when things aren't one or the other. And I think that's what makes Lilith a really, really interesting character.
I mean, Lilith is an expression of motherhood, at least as a mom myself, is an expression of motherhood that a lot of moms, think about, where it's like, oh, yes, I love being a mom so much. I love my children more than anything in this universe, and I would give them anything and everything. But where am I? How do I exist in this? Where is the identity that is solely me, as opposed to them, as opposed to the societal expectations and cultural expectations that get attached to motherhood? And it's part of the reason why I think I like Lilith as a character as much as I do. I would not make her choices, but I respect the facets and the inspirations that kind of led her down the path that she ended up taking.
Yeah. No, it's something that I really liked, where you start with this article that's about what happened in the cornfield last night about this mechanic named Joni Evers, and then piece by piece you add story and texture and family members and other stuff like that. That's how I think a lot of great stories get told. Is very rarely do stories just pop into your head fully formed. It's about what are you trying to say, and then you discover all these lovely things along the way. As long as you have a North Star to go towards. If you have no idea where you're going, you can get into trouble. But if you know what you're trying to convey, then a lot of times the best way to find the most powerful ways of telling those stories is through, I think, the way that games are made, which is iteratively. And you might find things that you may not have found if you came about crafting that story in a different method, or more linearly, or without seeing and responding to things.
Sure, absolutely. Again, speaks to the nature of creativity and how games come together, and how games in fact should not exist, quite frankly.
I know one thing that Greg often talks about, or sometimes talks about, with regards to how he writes stories, at least with us, is and this comes back to what he said earlier about starting with characters, is
Always.
when those characters are really well fleshed out, and once they are each other's opponents and that kind of thing, once they play off of each other, they kind of end up guiding parts of the story themselves. They end up telling you, nope, here's where I need to be in this moment. Here's what I need to be doing. Here's what I need to say. Here's how I need to react to this situation. So I know a good portion of it comes from those characters and from the fact that we started with them in the first place anyway.
Did you hear
I was
him?
waiting for that one. Yes.
Yeah, we got you. I knew that was coming up. So this is another moment of, like, again, kind of just you're expecting a certain pacing, a certain loop to continue, and I do just throw you off balance, like, just enough, and kind of ratchet up the intensity just enough. And like the statue is now teleporting, but now it's more free. Now you actually can't get past it. It's just, how do we take those elements and remix them in an interesting way and kind of create, it's like, where'd it go? That kind of unsettling nature of the kind of the thriller and the psychological horror.
This is my favorite, though. I love watching as my partner gets really unsettled when he plays scary games. Because before he met me, he did not do these kinds of games ever. Didn't watch horror movies. Didn't play scary games.
No.
Maybe it's friendly, Mike. It'll be okay.
Also, Gustavo did such a good job. Me and him collaborated on this section of, like, hitting these stingers, like, whenever you see them, of, again, making it respond to the player as though it is a scripted sequence for them.
Absolutely.
And kind of adding in more things to kind of reward you for that, or maybe torture you a little bit for that. But it makes it feel more natural, and the experience is slightly different from person to person. So yeah, that's always fun, seeing that stuff.
This is great. I genuinely, I love this. It's one of my favorite things about watching people play spooky games, is like, when are we going to unsettle the player next? It's very exciting. I kind of just want to, like, so, like, when we're thinking about designing those kinds of moments, and those moments of delight, even if they're technically moments of horror,
Yeah.
you know, when you were when you were originally designing them, what kind of challenges did you encounter in terms of like, did it interrupt pacing, and what went right, what went wrong in terms of like watching how players interacted with those moments?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it
got
is
this.
almost just like you have an idea and then it's like the execution of that idea. So it's elements of just like, like there was a certain, sequence where it's like we want you to,
It worked.
be trapped here or to not be trapped here. And like, I didn't account for that one permutation of choices that led to a soft lock of like,
Stop.
now it's just you and the statue
okay.
upstairs for the rest of eternity because there's no way you can get the turn
now.
off. And so it's just like little like
Vestiges of
things like that of like you have to think
Wasn't
about
sure
this
I'd
larger
ever see
emotional
again.
experience, but then you have to be like,
That's what matters.
okay, I have this variable and this bool
There's
and this trigger over here,
lot of
and
shit
like
I
how do you
gotta
actually
work
do it? And like you have to
Exactly.
oscillate
I know,
between
this
this
is
very
beginning,
just
but
dry like and flip that switch and go over here and do this
world
and like
to me.
and then go back and say, and when it's not working and then that like that can be
Right now, we've got bigger
challenging
problems.
just to get over
There's
that
an
hump.
unwelcome guest in our home.
But it's why you
Let's
do
go
it
kick that
because
fucker out.
that's how you enable that games to exist is doing all those things. So
The fun thing with that,
We
those
can get rid of
and
him,
a
can't
number
we?
of other little
I
spooky
hope
things
that
that
speech wasn't for
happen,
nothing.
like there's a couple of moments where lightning flashes through a window, or a cuckoo clock goes off, or something like that.
Basement. Right.
If I remember correctly, and Greg can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if I remember correctly, those actually came about as a solution to a pacing problem, not
yeah,
as something that ended
Oh,
up needing to be fixed. Like we ended up having some of these long moments where things were not happening the way that we expect them to.
Mike,
This is
maybe
interesting. Have we?
go look at Lilith.
If I'm being straight,
Oh, there's some.
I'm
There's,
scared. I don't know how we're gonna beat
There we
this
go.
thing.
those are
um,
optional conversations you can have. You can go talk with each of the vestiges before you go to the final confrontation. If you like want to kind of get some closure with some of these characters before,
Right.
we'll talk about the banishment a little bit.
Together.
yeah. I think he started one and then immediately looked down, and it made it look like we were actually in a hard luck bug state.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was
So that's
concerned for a
why
moment. I was like,
I told him to
"No."
look back up because we're yeah, there we go. We're
know.
good. So as we're
Good job.
Taking you
moving
seriously?
towards the conclusion of
Thinking you were a
Joni's
bad
story
dad.
for now, let's talk about the Skull Man. Why the Skull Man?
Yeah.
But that
Where'd he
wasn't your
come from?
fault.
One, he appeared kind of in these stories that were the original What Happened in the Cornfield, and then I fleshed him out in the Page A6 short story. He just seemed like a really good supernatural villain because that's something that I wanted in this game. Was I wanted something where the haunting was real, and it wasn't something that where we set up emotions and tonality and forebodingness and then like don't deliver. Not don't deliver, that's subjective, but like I really wanted there to be at least an interpretation where you're like, this stuff is really happening and like you really have to deal with the Skull Man. And he is intentionally one dimensional because Lilith, as the other real opponent, is so well three-dimensional. He is almost a manifestation, or he is negative, all these negative emotions personified, where he is greed, he is selfishness, he is this baleful spirit that just does, he only consumes and looks to get consuming. Kind of, you can then use him as a straightforward antagonist
same.
that is very present, and you're contesting against him, and he has his own desires that are very straightforward but still very motivating to contest. But then you can use that elements of like, okay, but then Joni is dealing with those same things. It's like, how do you balance negative emotions and selfish emotions, and then even reframe that around, are all selfish emotions or impulses bad? Right? It's like, because that's something, it's like looking out for herself, or what her mother is doing. It's like, just because you do something for yourself doesn't mean that's a bad thing. And so I think for him, it's an example of there's no misinterpreting his motivations, and that
Literally
allows,
black
I
and
think,
white.
the other characters, but that foil allows the other characters to shine more, because you have such an established tent pole to kind of work off of. And clearly, you can kind of cast all of your blame and emotion and frustration ultimately upon, like, okay, well, we as a family may have our differences, but this guy is clearly like an enemy of the family. So let's all unify around that. And that's what we did with this final banishment ritual, where, like, this part isn't quite as emotional as like the true resolution, which we happened in the past chapter. But in terms of, again, like the plot and like a nice satisfying conclusion, it was just a nice fun way, I think, of having the feeling of a boss fight that kind of, we don't have anything nearly this intense happening in the rest of the game. And so it's just a nice, again, pace changer that makes it feel like the culmination of what you're doing is you get to actually defeat the bad guy, on top of this more cerebral examination of like family trauma and stuff like that.
I think I know
Yeah,
there's also
grandma,
this
nice
moment,
lift.
like really early in development. I remember Greg laid out this thing of one of Joni's big issues is that she is going to handle everything herself. She is staunchly, fiercely independent.
Hyper independence. Born of
Hyper
trauma.
independent. Yep. And what she's got to learn through this story is she's got to learn that it's okay to let other people help you. And what you'll notice is in every single one of these 3 little threads,
Back there now.
one of the family members has to help. She can't do it herself.
And they help in a way that's unique to them. It's like Coulson's like super creative, like he's like, hey, I'm gonna make a portal for you here. It's like each one does something or says something that speaks to their character in some way. There's just a little bitty nod that kind of further builds this larger body of character for all these characters, all these family members.
Yeah.
Then we have the final push here.
Yeah, and so while like we have this intense boss fight thing, Joni herself actually isn't doing any of it except for being the hands that place the relics. She is actually letting down her walls and like
She's
letting everybody help her.
she's more active. I'm just now it's flooding back to me. That was the big thing, was I wanted the boss fight to be like Joni literally can't do it on her own, and like she needs all of her family members kind of fight the boss fight for her, and that's kind of the point. It ends up being a little more interactive than what the original conception was. But then, we kind of had this was a whole team effort between Nicolina, another one of our artists, Bree, Gustavo, Kjartan, myself, of like just having a really stereotypical, cliche, but just awesome, cathartic, this final push where you kind of have a moment that's a bit more scripted, where you kind of get to feel this moment of overcoming something that's a bit more straightforward, as a way to cap off this experience, and you can kind of put your own interpretation to everything around it.
Absolutely. And here we go. Finish it up, Mike. Aw, this is such a great moment.
People always like to say, and it goes into his nose.
Right up the nostril.
Goes right into his brain, shatters him.
As that is the point of love and family.
And then the epilogue here is really important. The epilogue, I think, really ties everything together. And originally, this was just a cutscene, but in the spirit of kind of that player expression, not taking as much control away, this was originally written as like a one after the other. but each one of these sequences is kind of has to do with one of her family members, and you can do that in whatever order that you want to, and it kind of lets you sit with it, I think, a little bit more if you want to, where it's like you don't have to click on something if you just want to sit. The only time that it's daytime, one of the first spooky areas that you were in, you can sit with it for a little bit. And then the voicemails in the credits are just phenomenal, and like Kelly knocked that stuff out of the park. Like there were moments where like we were just like we were all holding back tears in the delivery of like you could tell she believed it whenever she was saying all these things. Yeah, it's good stuff. So
never imposed, never forced.
I love that. This is such a beautiful culmination of all of the and especially starting off where or ending where we started is really poignant.
Auspicious, as Sarah would say.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
One of my favorite little touches throughout the game is the fact that Coulson refers to Joni as Firefly.
Spend some time with Sarah.
I mean, parents make up nicknames for their kids all the time.
Let her.
You know, I call my youngest daughter Boo from Monsters Incorporated.
Even if I never see the vestiges again,
that's where that came from.
It's pretty cool. I like that postcard a lot. I think that Bree did a really good job with that postcard. But yeah, I like that postcard a lot.
I also like that postcard a lot.
Yeah.
I've been holding on for too
That postcard is available for sale.
It is. Physically, every postcard you see in this game, you can buy on our store, which is another cool thing. A lot of the stickers in the postcards. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
And
there we go.
There we go.
And then we get these moments. So. And also kind of bringing Edith back of like, you know, Edith was more of like a narrative vehicle to kind of get the story started. But we wanted to make sure that like we didn't just like ignore her. And so I brought her back in of like, okay, there's also like the element of her trauma with her family impacts her relationship with her friends too.
Yeah.
And so this experience is not just about who she is with her family. It also is kind of reconnecting her with her friend as well. So I want to make sure that thread didn't get dropped, even though that was more of a narrative device.
I'll add. There's a thread we did drop intentionally because it was an idea for a comedic button, and we just when Greg wrote all this out, we're like, no, that we can't do that. But the idea we had, there's that note in the garage right at the beginning from Jeb, the annoyed customer.
You like Jeb a lot, yeah. Yeah.
I really laugh at Jeb. Jeb is hilarious to me, but he's got this annoyed note. Joni, I need my truck back. And she says, "You've broken it. You keep breaking it in new and interesting ways." And you know, the idea was to have one final voicemail all the way at the end that was just like, "Jeb, your truck's ready. Come get it." Like in a very annoyed tone. But like after all of this, he's like, "No, that's a terrible idea. We should absolutely not do that."
It's not that it's a terrible idea. It's that the culmination with the message to Lilith, that's so powerful that like you have to end on that note. And also it's like, you know, Jeb's a deep cut. Where like Jeb appears in other stories and he's kind of this stereotypical kind of bumbling, like overstretching. Although he has a decent number of stories written about him now, he's interesting. But yeah, it's like one of the things where it's like, what if no one picked up that note? People might be like, "Who is Jeb?" So it was a really good idea, but it's more about the overall package, right? It's you know, killing your darlings for the overall package. So.
I wanted to tell you.
Listen, as writers, we have to be prodigious about darlings' murders.
I'm sorry, I haven't been there for you and Grandma.
That's how I feel about it anyway.
Glad Sarah has.
Yeah, of course you're in the credits. Right?
Well, I mean, neither of us do. So I saw my name and I was like, "What?"
I'm really glad you're my dad.
I didn't directly support this game.
You are currently directly supporting this game, so.
Okay.
Wow.
Bye.
This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I feel like, you know, I know we've been working together for a little while now, but I feel like this unlocks even more understanding into how the two of you how the two of you work and into how that's evolved over the years, and
Harder than
inspiration,
I
and
thought it'd be.
I can't wait to talk
I
about
think
where we're going to go
what I'm trying to
next.
say
Me too.
is
Yeah,
I
me too.
like to see you.
I mean, I think what we see on the screen right now is a perfect
Like to see me.
indication of that. This is just one tale from the woods
I
across the
can't
causeway.
We've
forgive
got a
you,
lot more tales to
but
tell.
I can
do.
understand.
You do.
As much as I can.
Amanda, thank you so much for all the thoughtful questions and
Tired
guiding of the
of
conversation.
stuffing my
I think
past
that
away,
that just flew
hoping that if I
by.
don't look
It
at
did.
Honestly, I feel like we could do
Go
that all
away.
over again and like talk more specifically,
there's
even more about
too much
like
to talk
drill
about.
down
The
even
voicemail
farther
really hit the place, so
other little things here and there. So that was
I'll end with this.
that was good. Thank you.
I'm glad.
Um,
I'm glad. It's
I
nice
love
to
you,
put those
and
former journalist skills to good use again. I don't often get to
Yeah.
do that as much anymore.
second chances.
And I love that last piece with Joni's voicemail to Lilith. I thought that was really just such a beautiful touch. Until we meet again along the causeway.
Until we meet again. Yeah.
Well, and a big thank you to Mike for being our driver here, taking us all the way from the beginning to the end
Yeah.
and moving through the spookiness. Yay!
And thank you
There
all
we
you
go.
folks. Thank you all you folks who have just kind of been along listening to us yap. We appreciate you showing up. Hopefully this was interesting. Yeah, just appreciate you showing up and caring enough to be here on a Saturday.
And I'm sure that we will see you all very soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you
All right.
all.